So I guess I will call the meeting to order and get started then. First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody to the 2020 FERC Commission annual meeting. And again, this is our first Zoom meeting online for the FERC Commission. We have a few problems, but we are doing this online due to the COVID-19. So if everyone does have their mute buttons on and their cameras off, so all the presenters don't have any issues during their presentations. Again, this has been probably the most difficult year for mink farmers in my lifetime. While we have seen terrible markets in the past, in the late 60s, again in the early 90s, 2020 has surely surpassed those market turndowns. First, we saw a turndown in prices as world production got out of control and demand for our product began to shrink. China's expansion of retail sales leveled off and possibly may have declined a bit. Then, with the loss of our two North American auction houses, the U.S. farmers' product was no longer being promoted like it had been in the past. And now, a world pandemic making travel and traditional live auctions nearly impossible. The two remaining auction companies have done their best to adapt to the ever-changing world conditions. North America production has been drastically reduced, along with the rest of the world's fur-producing countries. World supply of new mink skins is well below the demand for our product. However, there are still many skins in storage that have not yet been put in production that are being held by farmers, buyers, and speculators. With all that being said, skin prices should increase as supply and demand return to some normalcy. Again, the FERC Commission has not been immune from this market turndown. These reasons are: the assessment was reduced from 12 cents per skin to 8 cents per skin. A decrease in production, so less pelts being sold. NAFA's bankruptcy and not receiving the 2019 pelt assessment from their last two auctions. A reduction in grant money from the IFF. Basically, we're getting zero. Has greatly reduced the FERC Commission's income. Thankfully, the FERC Commission's board's frugalness over many years has resulted in a reserve which we are able to operate on. But as everyone knows, reserves don't last forever. In 1994, the FERC Commission was formed. It was a merger of the Mink Farmers Research Foundation and the National Board of Mink Farmers. Terms of the merger demanded that two separate budgets and funds be maintained. Half of the money collected through the pelts assessment goes to research, and the other half to all the other programs. Today, the FERC Commission is recognized as the National Trade Association for mink farming in the U.S. The FERC Commission provides a positive message of fur farming to the media, the government, the public, and also directs the research funds. Without the FERC Commission, there would be no Animal Enterprise Terrorism Act, no method to discredit the multi-million-dollar animal rights campaigns, no way to track and identify animal terrorists, no way to prevent and assist farmers in an animal release. No method to influence laws and regulations. No centralized veterinary expertise. No research into health, disease, and humane animal care. No assistance to farmers dealing with regulators or local administrators. No assurance to the public of the humane animal care. And most importantly, no vehicle to promote and defend our way of life to the general public. The work and persistence of many mink farmers and industry people resulted in a positive outcome for the mink farmers to be included in the various COVID government assistance programs. Without the Fur Commission and farmers' persistence, we would have been left out of these programs. The Fur Commission depends on the support of mink farmers through their pelt assessment and their contribution of time and talent to the industry. The Fur Commission always welcomes and encourages farmers to run for our board and to be involved in the Fur Commission's programs. Today, we will be reviewing the activities of the Fur Commission over the past year and detailing the successes and challenges that we face going forward. Thank you, and now I will turn the meeting over to our Executive Director, Michael Whelan.
Okay, I believe you can see and hear me now. So thank you, Bob. Yeah, I'd like to reiterate a couple of the things that Bob said. This year is like no other year. First was going to go over our budget a bit, and there's a couple of things we have to take note of. First of all, when we developed our budget for 2020, it was about this time last year. So we knew pelt production was down, but we had no way of knowing that NAFA would go belly up or the COVID would strike and, virtually shut down all sales, retail sales, and sales of pelts. So after years of sound financial management, we had reduced our pelt assessment in 2018 from 12 cents to 8 cents. And that was to help the ranchers' bottom line because, the prices were still going down, but none of this, pandemic stuff had started. Last year at this time, we started working, and then the NAFA situation happened. We lost our pelt assessment from the final 2 sales. And that put us into the red for the first time in my tenure as director. And then again in 2020 when the COVID hit and all the sales shut down around the world, that was another huge hit for us too. So we have basically not received any funding from this time last year until recently. So in 2020, yes, we're going to be operating in the red again because of the pelt outs, because of the low clearances and the lack of retail sales. But as Bob said, we were able to operate for the previous 8 years under budget, which built us some reserves just in case something like this came up. We do have the reserves to operate for another 2 years probably without any revenue, and we will continue to operate as long as we can, just like I know the ranchers want to continue to operate as long as they can. So I'm going to see if I can share my screen here, and let's see, screen 2. Can you see it? I'm hoping you can. This is a generalized look at our budget.
We can't see it yet, Michael.
Okay. Oh, wait. Oh, I have to hit the share button. Oh, duh.
Now we
Okay.
can see it.
Can you see it now? Okay. Yeah, this is an outline of our budget. And this we run on a calendar year, January 1st to December 31st. But I was able to go into our financial bookkeeping system and run it from September 1 to August 31st. So it's basically current. The issues we have, you can see where the revenue. We budgeted $310,000, $250,000 Pelt assessment was an estimate, and then IFF grants, which we've gotten every year until this year. This year, we don't have any IFF grants, and the Pelt assessment is way below what we anticipated. If you look through our expenses, what we budgeted in this column and what we've actually spent in this column, we've stayed pretty much under budget on everything except for the big one that pops out is this $212,000. This is lobbying fees and legal fees that we dedicated towards fighting the fur bans in California and in New York City. We want to help our industry partners, the retail sector. These fur bans target the retail sector. They don't target farming, but you know we are all one industry, and if one guy goes down, so does the rest of them. So we donated significant funds for lobbyists and legal legal consultations on fighting these fur bans. Included in there also is legal fees for a lawsuit against the city of San Francisco's fur ban. We've been helping the IFF, who's taken the lead on that. And that's, one of the small victories of this year is because the judge ruled that the city of San Francisco cannot ban online sales, which it sounds, kind of minor, but it basically, negates any ban that they can have. So, so other than the brick and mortar sales, anyone can buy fur in San Francisco still. And this has also affected other states and municipalities from instituting their own bans, knowing that they would be, they wouldn't be effective if they couldn't ban the online sales also. But you look at the rest of the numbers and we're pretty far under what we budgeted. And so in our budget, when we designed it, we were 149,000 in the red. When in actuality, we are looking at more than 400,000 in the red. At the end, if anyone has any questions on any of these, well, I'll take questions when I'm done with the presentation. So let me see now. Okay. Am I muted? Nope. I think I'm good. Next, I wanted to go over our programs, the programs that Fur Commission runs on behalf of the farmers and the farming industry. We basically break them out into 6 different categories. There's government affairs, opposition research, which is the animal rights engagement, ranch services, PR and education, certification, and mink research. As Bob mentioned, the mink research is a separate budget and separate funds. We don't mix those because the mink research is one of the few things that everybody in the industry can support. Supporting the health and the welfare of the mink. As far as government affairs, in the past year, the majority of our work has been gone. At the beginning of the year, it was surrounding the fur bans. California had just passed their fur ban, and there was a strong effort in New York City to pass a fur ban there. Ryan Holt has played a major part in our efforts into negating these fur bans and stopping them before they were installed. You know, one silver lining to this whole COVID mess is that all of those have kind of been put on hold. And then moving forward, we fully expect the animal rights activities to come back and increase again once the COVID panic has subsided. But with the state government funding, I don't think any state governments are going to give up any tax revenues because of all the everybody's budget has been blown up by the COVID responses. So I think that they'd have a lot harder time trying to pass a fur ban in these conditions than they may have if COVID didn't come. We also spent a lot of time trying to get those government relief funds for the farmers. The three programs, the EIDL, Emergency Income Disaster Loans, which were loans, those are available to basically anybody that suffers a disaster, and primarily that's been in the past, you know, tornadoes and hurricanes and those kind of things. The ranchers were eligible to that. Some did it, some didn't. Low interest loans, they are required to be paid back. There's the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. That is a loan on the outside. You consider it a loan, but if the money is used, the money is directed towards keeping people employed. And if the money is all used and the people employed continue to be employed after the money's gone, then it turns into a grant. You do not have to pay it back as long as you keep those employees working. And then the CFAP, which we just went through, and that was a real bear. They identified farm products originally back in May that would be eligible for relief funds. Mink was not included. With help from our legal team and some very active ranchers, we contacted numerous congressional representatives and regulators trying to get included. We gave them all the arguments how we, you know, our industry was eligible, that the sales based on sales losses, and so the second round came out and we were still not included. Their arguments had some huge holes in it, why mink wasn't included. And we identified those and went right back at our congressional representatives. I'd especially like to mention Colin Peterson, congressman from Minnesota, who's the chair of the House Ag Committee. He really carried our water for us in a lot of ways, having personal conversations with the USDA Secretary, Mr. Perdue. So fortunately, we were able to go over the heads of the FSA office that initially denied us, and we did get accepted for the CFAP2 program. Hopefully, the ranchers are taking advantage of that. I understand that the application process is very simple, and people are getting some much needed relief funds. Furthermore, in government affairs, we also take on local issues, local and state issues. If a rancher has a problem with a local, land use council or township, or other local or their state wants to do undue regulation, we can help with that. We're back to working in Pennsylvania again because we thought we had it beat. But the Game Commission is coming back now and wanting to have jurisdiction over mink farming. Their argument that mink are wild animals. So we're back at that again. But so government affairs does take up, especially in these days, take up a lot of efforts of the Fur Commission. We continue to do opposition research. That's the animal rights engagement. Jason does a wonderful job on that. He, if you get the NetWatch, he sends out daily emails with about 4 or 5 items in each one regarding animal rights campaigns throughout the country and throughout the world. The items that affect us closest are entered into our database, and then the database is used to provide background for media that's writing on the animal rights, or for law enforcement that may not be aware of a certain individual or organization's past. So we keep the database updated. Jason has a custom web crawling program that enables him to do daily searches on over 50 websites and hundreds of social media postings. Just try to get a handle on where the next threat is coming from via the animal rights lobbies and campaigners. So we're still very, even though there hasn't been a lot of activity targeting us, we are always on it. We're not going to get surprised by these things. Fur Commission does have a worldwide reputation, and for private industry monitoring the animal rights campaigns. Other industries have started on board, and but as far as the media and the law enforcement, Fur Commission is always the first go-to when researching different animal rights issues. Ranch Services. Ranch Services provides free veterinary consults to the ranchers. They work on providing, working with the Mink Research, the Mink Research Center, John's organization, in providing vaccine and making sure that there's vaccine for the following years. As John might mention in his report, the vaccine production bounces around. Sometimes, one company will decide they're not going to do it anymore, and we have to scramble to find another company to do it. Included in Ranch Services going forward too are developing the COVID biosecurity. We've been fortunate that we've had very minimal COVID breakouts on the farms, but that is only dependent on how well we abide by biosecurity on the farm. Public relations and education. These are our communications, not only within the industry, but to the public and to the media. We always want to have a positive message of our industry. We want to emphasize that animal care is our #1 priority on the farms. So we continue to do that through our websites. We do not do social media at this time. The primary reason is that we would probably have to have a dedicated employee, because it would have to be monitored and administered on a daily basis. And we try to keep our budget as low as possible, and we just have not seen the need to justify another employee for this. That may change. I know then the younger generations rely almost solely on social media. So if we need to reach out to them more effectively, we might have to hire on a social media director. As you probably know, as hopefully you have seen, that our internal communications have increased a lot. We are not sending out newsletters, hard copy anymore to save money on postage, but we're basically gone all electronic communications. Besides the Net Watch that goes out daily on animal rights stuff, we have e-letters that are out once a month, sometimes more often depending on what's happening around the industry. And then you'll get security alerts and informational alerts from us on different issues affecting the ranchers. So we try to send out communications to the ranchers at least a couple times a month, just to keep everybody informed on what's going on. We are the first go-to for the media on when issues arise surrounding mink farming or fur farming. Unfortunately, those issues are always negative. The most recent has been the culling of the mink in Europe. And we were very effective in putting our position out there as comparing us to the European situation is like comparing apples and oranges. The European farms that were infected were in large populated areas where COVID outbreaks had happened in the human population. They were very concentrated. The country of Holland, which previously produced about twice the amount of mink that the United States did, but it's only the size of Massachusetts. So you can see that the production there was much more concentrated. Here in the United States, this is all our message. We did a New York Times interview. Here in the United States, the ranches are much more spread out over 22 states. They're much more rural and isolated, and none of them are near any serious human outbreaks. And the media story kind of disappeared after a couple of days, which is exactly what we wanted. Certification. Last year, we updated the certification guidelines. Basically, the requirements are the same as the old ones, but there's a lot more reporting, and there's a third-party inspection system rather than our local veterinarian. The few ranches that have done it have scored in the 90 percentiles. So it was not difficult to pass it. It just took a little bit more time to fill out different forms and reporting forms. We've kind of, this year it's slowed down. The recertifications have slowed down, I think primarily because, first of all, there's no money on the ranch to do it. Secondly, a lot of people aren't sure if they're still going to be ranching this time next year. So, they don't want to go go through the work to get certified and not be ranching. So I expect that's going to pick up in the next year. Many ranchers that certified under the old system will be expiring next year, so we expected an uptick on that. As far as integrating, we did this to qualify for the fur mark label, and I think Mike Brown on the call will tell us more about what the fur mark is, but it's a program administered by the IFF to assure transparency and animal care. This is all done to qualify for that fur mark label. In Europe, with the welfare, we're still negotiating and working with IFF and the Europeans to either integrate some of the fur mark criteria into our certification, or work something out with them so that our certification systems are acceptable worldwide. All the movement is anything we do is dependent on the ranchers surviving these tough times right now. So we're going to revisit all that probably in the beginning of the year after pelting this year and see how we stand. If I were to give a year in review, it would definitely focus on the two big events of 2019, 2020. Those are the NAFA bankruptcy and the outbreak of COVID, and the effects of both of those on the fur ranching business is devastating. As you all know, NAFA last November declared bankruptcy. They did not pay the ranchers for the last two sales. They did not pay Fur Commission for the last two sales. They did not pay their levies to the international organizations, and it really hit everybody hard. I've heard some horror stories, some absolutely heartbreaking stories of some of the ranchers, that just got into the business maybe in the last few years, hadn't made a penny, and then basically just lost everything. What Fur Commission is trying to do is advocate for the U.S. ranchers. We hired an attorney in Canada to represent the U.S. ranchers, and we've tallied up the losses of the ranchers that have contacted us is about 2.7 million from 61 ranchers that this attorney is going to be fighting for. We figure that if we all join together as one entity, we might get higher on the payment list rather than just individual ranchers with a $10,000 or a $15,000 request. If we can get in there as the U.S. ranchers at 2.7, we might get higher up on the list. Currently, from what I can tell and from what I understand, is that NAFA is presently still trying to sell assets. The banks seem to be the first ones to be paid. I heard a figure that 15 million has been paid and 17 million is still outstanding to the bank. No one else is going to get paid until they're paid, and that could be another year. So, if we get paid at all, it's not going to happen tomorrow. But we're going to continue to do it, continue to work for the ranchers in getting the money that's owed to them, and we will let the community know of any updates or moving forward on that. And the second thing, the COVID, that just came out of nowhere. It first hit in China, and they absolutely shut down all retail business. Very little, if any, coats, garments sold during that time. Then following that was the loss of our live auctions due to the COVID travel restrictions and restrictions on gatherings. If those two things alone didn't destroy our industry, then you can really tell how strong we can be when things aren't going right. Following the loss of those, the COVID broke on the European farms, and it continues to. But when it broke out, there was all sorts of media coverage, all sorts of misinformation out there. It has not been proven, although people seem to believe it's possible, but it has not been proven that mink can transfer COVID from mink to human. And we hope that's the case. But the culling of farms in Europe commenced, and it's still going on to this day. I think Ryan might have a little update on that when he speaks. And so all of this together has led to the contraction of our industry. People were pelting out beforehand or pelting down beforehand, but this has really just pushed a lot of people to the edge. And we'll know better at the end of this year after pelting how many people keep breeding stock. But hopefully we can get through this as well. There is a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, I believe. And I think the auction companies will touch on this, but the clearances seem to have been better these last couple of sales. I'm hearing 70%, and that does give us reason to hope. If we can, as soon as we get to 100%, then prices will start going up again. I fully expect the retail sector to be active this year, this coming spring and winter. I don't think they're going to do another shutdown like they did earlier, so that's good news too. At least get some mink moving. So there we are. Moving forward, it's kind of like, it's hard to plan. We've learned from this year, it's hard to plan what we're going to do next. It's almost like we're playing reactive. We're playing defense. So, in the next month or so, the board of directors and I will start planning a budget for next year and look at priorities and discuss where we can do the best for the most people. Our number one priority is to keep you, the ranchers, in business and keep you allowing to do business, not letting our detractors come in and keeping you from earning a living. So I think that's just about it for me. I can take any questions if anybody has any. Okay.
Remember to unmute yourself if you have a question.
Jason, say that again.
Said remember to unmute yourself if you have a question.
Okay. Okay.
Michael,
yes.
Michael, just a couple of quick housekeeping things for you. As we found out yesterday, in fact, I had another text today while we were on the meeting of farmers that had pelted out last year, wondering if they could access any of that CFAP money, and they sent us back that answer. I gave it to you
Right.
last night. Do you want to go ahead and?
Yeah. Unfortunately, ranchers that pelted out last year are not eligible for the CFAP money. According to the rules laid down by the program by the USDA, said you had to be in the business of farming at the time of the application. We looked at ways of trying to get around that, but it's in black and white there, and I don't think there's anything we can do about that. I'm sorry.
The only thing that I would caution people that think they're going to get around that is you're messing with the federal government, and trying to falsely apply for funding can be pretty painful.
Yeah. We don't want to add jail time to the trials and tribulations of raising mink right now. Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll send it back to Bob.
All right. Well, thank you, Michael. Then I will turn the meeting over to Dr. John Easley, and he can talk about the research, also maybe a little bit about vaccine, and also about the COVID, what's going on the farm. So, John?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'll give you a report about the research committee and what we've been up to lately here. So for ongoing research projects, Dr. Nieminen from Finland, and she's at the University of Eastern Finland. This is a continuation of Dr. Rudo and Watt's work on fatty liver. So Dr. Nieminen has developed a working model to produce fatty liver and understand the effects at the molecular level. They recently found that orotic acid protocol will only produce the initial stages of fatty liver. This was a model that they had developed to study fiber. They found that the cells and the extracellular vesicles start to self-correct the situation. So Dr. Nieminen has pursued this possible beneficial phenomenon of extracellular vesicles modulating the intracellular fat accumulation, so the actual event of fatty liver production. So Dr. Nieminen has finalized her research project and submitted a final report. In summary, her team demonstrated that orotic acid as a tool to manipulate fatty liver syndrome process could only be used to initiate the process, and that these extracellular vesicles seem to be very important in influencing the liver cells transformation into fatty liver cells. Okay, this knowledge has gained us a new pathway of communication between the liver cells and the fat cells, and this needs to be further studied to understand how we might be able to manipulate that pathway so that we possibly could develop a therapeutic or a preventative process. So she's in the process of evaluating that potential research process and program for us, and then we'll potentially be applying for a research grant for that. And the Joint Mink Research Committee will be evaluating that if it does come to pass. Dr. Tasia Taxis, she's at Michigan State University. She had applied for a project named Variations in Mink Genome Associated with the Tolerance Evolution Disease. That's basically trying to find genetic changes that allow mink to become more tolerant to evolution disease, and so that we could maybe be able to develop a chip so that we could screen our mink for those specific genes that we could select more quickly and more accurately for the tolerance to evolution disease. So this proposal focuses on the genetic components of tolerance to evolution disease, with primarily emphasis on the U.S. population, because that's going to be her study model. The aim was to develop tools that the farm-to-mink industry can use to better select for AD-tolerant mink. This application was conditionally approved by the Joint Mink Research Committee, but in having more discussions with Dr. Taxis, it was determined that she should first develop a study to determine the infectivity levels of ADV, which would be orally, that we would give to the mink, and how much that would take to infect the mink, so that we could further define her study. She had finalized that proposal, but that project has been delayed until next summer due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So she's further developing her plan, and we're trying to move forward for that for next year. So new research grant approvals for this last year was Dr. Lang. He's at Memorial University, and his project was entitled The Prevalence Distribution of Molecular Epidemiology of Evolution Disease Virus, Mink Enteritis Virus, and Other Parvoviruses in Wild Mink in British Columbia. Basically, the main goal of this project is to continue work that he's done in some of his previous projects, and that's to investigate the distribution of ADV and ADV-like viruses in wild mink. He's also investigating the prevalence of skunk AD in virus in mink, he's preparing that because of previous studies that he's done. MEV strain variants will also be investigated, along with novel parvoviruses that may threaten the farm-to-mink industry. The project was to be finalized by the end of 2020, but again, due to the pandemic, this has been delayed. Almost every research facility and researcher we were dealing with had to put all their research on hold throughout the summer and have just gotten back into their labs now. So a lot of things were being delayed because of the pandemic. Dr. Lang has submitted an interim report that described his team's efforts to analyze the initial data that was collected, waiting for the university to reopen. Dr. Lang was able to publish a paper in the Journal of Pathogens. 2 novel parvoviruses have been identified, one that may be transmitted between foxes and mink. He also, in collaboration with researchers from the University of California in Davis, were able to understand the distribution and the evolution of the skunk AD virus, which they found that can infect mink. So in the months to come, more samples will be collected and further data analyzed. Basically, what we're trying to do with that project is to understand what threats there may be out in the wild population through variant ADV viruses that may infect our mink. And it's been very interesting to find out some of the results that he's seen about some of the AD viruses that are out there that potentially can cause us a problem. So hopefully he'll be able to further examine this data and get us a better understanding. There was a new research grant request, and that was from Dr. Meyer. He's at Dalhousie University in Nova Scotia, and this was integrating a multiple omics approach to improvement of feed efficiency and reproductive performance in mink. This project is designed to develop genetic traits and explore the biology underlying feed efficiency and reproductive performance. This project is to be a 4-year project and is very quite involved. The Joint Mink Research Committee, again, has conditionally approved this application for support funding pending Dr. Meyer's successfully obtaining NSERT Alliance 90-10 matching grants. So that means that the NSERT program would pay 90% of this. The industry would pay 10%. This application has again been delayed due to the COVID-19. He's still in the process of applying. He has found out because of the project and the amount of industry contributions and that some changes to the Alliance program that there's going to have to be some changes in this application. We've been discussing that throughout with the Joint Mink Research Committee. It's looking like the industry is going to have to incorporate more funding, getting maybe to almost down to a 2-to-1 type matching. So we're reevaluating these changes and are going to make a determination after we get more information from Dr. Meyer. So research proposals that are still in review. Dr. Rebecca Maher from, again, Dalhousie University. Dr. Maher has submitted a grant request for a project entitled Identifying Optimal Environments for Long-Term Welfare and Beneficial Development of Kits. Dr. Maher will collaborate with Dr. Diaz on this project. Dr. Maria Diaz has done many other projects for us, both behavioral welfare scientists and researchers. The Joint Research Committee reviewed this proposal and approved it. The funding will be a collaboration between the Mink Veterinary Consulting and Research Service and the Joint Mink Research Committee. Dr. Maher is applying for NSERT support for this project, which is a condition of the approval. And this is, again, becoming more difficult because of the pandemic, for one thing, but also some changes that have occurred in the process. The Dalhousie support team is helping to address this, so we will have to evaluate the funding as new potential requests for funding resources are asked of us. Again, it looks like we're going to have to add more industry money to the process if it's going to move forward. Another researcher, Dr. Jamie Delary from Laval University in Quebec. Dr. Delary has proposed a research model that would explore if there are biological aspects to fur chewing and tail biting, and if antioxidant feed additives may help in a prophylactic and/or therapeutic effect. And Dr. Ayer had submitted kind of a research application review in that we would kind of look at that proposal, see if it was worthwhile, and we did give him approval to that and asked him then to submit a research grant proposal. We haven't received that yet. Maybe I'll stop there. Anybody have any questions on the active research projects that we're doing and/or the proposed funding projects that we're looking at right now? Okay. Further defining some of the research that's going on, Dalhousie University. Dalhousie is in Nova Scotia. It is the only research facility in North America that we have right now. They have a very nice facility there. The university is behind that facility 100%. And so we're trying to be as involved with that facility as much as possible with the research that we're doing. And besides the Joint Mink Research Committee, there is the Joint Research Partnership. That's a collaboration between, well, it was the Nova Scotia Department of Agriculture and Industry, And now the Nova Scotia Department of Agriculture, that money has been utilized for projects already. So now it's just money that has been donated or received from industry in the past. So we have a pool of money that we're working off of. This is money basically from the mega AD project that was initiated through the old Nova Scotia Agricultural College. One of the projects is Dr. Abrahamian, and this is the development of the next generation of vaccine for Lucian disease. So this project is being done at the University of Montreal. We should have an interim report soon. This project is pursuing 2 novel antigen delivery systems. These systems are currently being constructed and evaluated by Dr. Abrahamian's team. They're also being tried in the swine industry. He also is applying for NSERT support for this program that's supposed to be known by beginning of October here. And it seems like that should be a very high possibility of getting that request, so that money then will be funneled into his account to continue this project. Dr. Mayer, who is our research chair at the Modern Mink Management, again at Dalhousie, his product for the utilization of genomics in mink management is progressing. But again, due to the turn down in the industry, we lost some of the participating farms in that project. So the project's been somewhat delayed. But what we're trying to do there is determine the different genetic factors that influence the major components, economic components that affect the raising of mink, and be able to develop a way of being able to evaluate genetically our mink, and we can select for our mink using genomic chips. So right now the fur unit at Dalhousie University is, and one other private farm are the only contributors at this point. So we're going to be trying to get other farms involved. Fortunately, Dr. Mayer was appointed to full tenureship at the Dalhousie University. So that's very good for us because he'll be able to continue with all the projects that he started. And he's very involved with the industry, easy to work with, good communicator, and seems to be adapting pretty well to working with the mink industry. So that's been a big plus for us. The mink, as I said before, the Mink Research Partnership is now supported exclusively by the North American mink industry. The Dalhousie University administration does all the support from an administrative side for the Mink Research Partnership, which we're quite thankful for their doing that. Other business, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused pretty much havoc throughout the industry. There's been a tremendous amount of mortality and illness and delayed most of our research projects. As everyone knows, the Netherlands was the first country to break. Their governmental response was not only from a scientific standpoint, but from a political standpoint, and they have chosen to test and call any positive farms. So that's ongoing at this point. There was one other farm in Spain that was positive. That farm was also culled. It was a quite isolated farm, so they've hoped to be able to mitigate any other transmissions that it may have occurred because of contact with farms. But again, most of these farms, from the research that was done, the farms were contaminated by contaminated humans in the farms. We've had farms, unfortunately, here in Utah that I think everyone is aware of that have broke. Again, it followed somewhat the same pattern that was seen in Europe. We maybe had a little bit mortality here. There may have been some extenuating circumstances also on these farms, but it does spread extremely quickly throughout a farm. The mink are very susceptible to it. So it's extremely important, even though you may be in areas that don't have a lot of human population infection levels. You've got to be very careful with your mink. Everyone should be wearing masks, washing hands before they come, changing clothes. If anyone has any contact or feels any clinical signs of flu or COVID-19, that they have to be encouraged and required not to come to the farms. It's devastating if it comes on farms, or can be, and it's also very important for the work that we've done from an industry standpoint to work with USDA to get guidance and action policy recommendations out of One Health Committee, so that we have a controlled marketing program. We do not have a culling program, because there would be no money for indemnity for any culled farms. So what's going to happen is, if a farm gets positive, they will be quarantined. Testing will be done to determine that the virus has been eliminated off the farm. Once that's occurred, then the farm will be allowed to allow animals to be, and/or pelts to be, released off the farm. So the government's taking this extremely seriously. And if we have a lot more farms that start breaking, those recommendations could change, because they do believe it's a public health issue. In Denmark, there are now at least up over 23 farms that were positive. And the researchers that I've spoken with there are extremely confident. They've been able to demonstrate that the virus was brought onto the farms by humans. The virus changed in the mink, and that changed virus was then transmitted back to people, and the people that got infected transmitted that virus to other people. So, and this is new information that's out now. So that is extremely important to the industry. It shows that mink potentially can be a reservoir for the virus for the human population. So we have to be very careful on how we address this. We're working right now with and have made contact with multiple entities to develop testing protocols, just like we use for the Aleutian disease virus, so you could do it on farm. We're also in discussions with some different companies about developing a vaccine for the mink industry, which if this continues to develop, I think will be extremely important for the industry, from twofold: one, to protect our mink, and then secondly, to show the rest of industry and our governments that we're being very proactive with this, and we're looking to protect our mink and to protect the human population secondarily, because of the vaccination programs we're doing. So both those things are going to be very important. So those are the new research we're doing, and then the COVID-19. So again, with the COVID-19, the biggest take-home message is to protect your mink by having very good biosecurity, and that means human PEE wearing, so that you can decrease that potential transmission. So for all the farms that are out there, it's something that you really should be doing. This virus is not going to go away for a long time. It's going to be circulating in the human population. You need to protect your mink. So are there any questions?
Dr. Strine again. One comment that they talked about today, talking to the researchers, was the prevalence of cats and their reaction or non-reaction, I guess, is more important to COVID-19. That we're testing feral cats, and we're running between 85 and 90% positive, but not having any noticeable death loss in the feral cats that are on the farms. So once again, the cats can spread it just as faster than people can from this epidemic.
Yeah, and that's one thing. We're learning things every day about this virus, not only how it works within the human population, but also in the mink population. And to their credit, the farms, some of the farms in Utah worked very closely with the Centers for Disease Control, the National Veterinary Service Laboratory, other governmental agencies to understand this virus. They allowed testing on their farms of themselves so that we can better understand this virus, how it works on a farm, how it works within the mink, so that we can address it in a more scientific way. So if there's no other questions, then further Joint Mink Research Committee business. At this point, we had discussed the Canadians. We usually had 3 representatives from CMBA or Canada side. We had 3 from the U.S. side. The Canadians are only going to be sending 2 people to any face-to-face meetings. In the near future, we probably will not have any face-to-face meetings, but to decrease their input costs, they are going to have 2 representatives, which is able to be fulfilled through our memorandum of understanding. So that won't be a problem. They have a 3rd person that's designated as an alternate or can be there virtually. Sue Hupcroft is managing the distribution and the accounts for Joint Mink Research Committee. At this point, it's becoming quite difficult for her, and we may have some further discussions, and we may have to move that responsibility to somebody else. But we're working on that situation. The budget sheet and the spreadsheet that we have, Sue and Dr. Hildebrandt help to manage, and that gives us a really good understanding of where our funds are, what commitments we have in the future. So that's working out quite well for us. Yeah, the IFASA Congress, which is the International Federation of Animal Scientists Association. They have a Congress every 4 years. That was to happen in Warsaw, Poland this year, but again, because of the pandemic, it's been postponed until next year. We don't have a date for that right now, so we're waiting to see that come up. The U.S. was asked to potentially host the 2024 meeting. Those discussions have been delayed primarily because of the situation the industry is in from an economic standpoint, and then also the pandemic. So those discussions will happen in the future. From the Mink Veterinary Consulting and Research Service side, and that's the vaccine distribution. United Vaccines, I think hopefully everybody knows, has been sold. It was sold to a large pharmaceutical multinational company. They have committed to producing the vaccine in the future once they can get the facility up and running again. They lost a lot of key personnel, so that needs to be done. At this point, they're looking at only being able to produce the distemper product for next year, and that would be only for the U.S. market at this point. The 3-way product would not be able to be produced until 2022, and there is some question about even if that is going to be able to happen. Right now, the Canadians are able to import both the distemper and the 3-way vaccine from Europe. That's the IDT product. That company has also been sold to a multinational, and that company was to be shut down, but now they are going to continue to produce vaccine because United Vaccines will not be online quick enough. So the Canadians are able to import that vaccine with some import permitting work that was done just recently. We have been now able to, in the United States, import the 3-way product that has arrived in the States at this point. It's not been able to be released yet, but at least we'll have that for next year. We, at this point, do not have permission to import the distemper product. Hopefully United Vaccines will be able to produce enough distemper for us for all next year. Again, those discussions are ongoing. Some of it has to do with logistics, but it's it's a work in progress at this point. So unfortunately, the vaccine scenarios are still somewhat tentative. We have 2 companies now that potentially will produce vaccine, but it's been insinuated at least that once United Vaccines is up and running, they will be the sole producer of vaccine for outside of China at this point. We've had discussions with the Chinese manufacturers also. It's extremely difficult to be able to coordinate that vaccine production and then inventory to be brought into the United States or Canada. So our hope is with IDT and with United Vaccines at this point. So are there any questions along those lines? Okay, hearing no questions, I'll turn it back over to Michael, or Bob, sorry.
Hello. Well, thank you, John. John, I just have one quick question for you. With COVID, so if a farmer becomes positive and he suspects his mink are positive, what are the proper steps the farmer should follow?
Well, COVID-19 is a reportable disease in the United States. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you, John.
Okay. Yeah. COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2 is a reportable disease in the United States. So if your mink have symptoms, which are usually upper respiratory signs and or going off feed from some unknown reason, yeah, you got to contact your veterinarian. They can take samples. They'll be sent to the area veterinary diagnostic labs. And then if a COVID-19 diagnosis is made, then governmental agencies will be contacting you, and that will be your state animal health organization. And they will follow the policy that was developed by the U.S. government, and basically they'll come in and do some further testing. If it's shown that it's truly the virus, then your farm will be quarantined. Procedures will be reviewed for handling the mink, protective PPE stuff for your employees. Probably want testing done of the employees and yourselves, any in contact people. Further testing that will be done on a timed basis. And what they're looking for there is an understanding of how the virus is moving through the farm. Once it's demonstrated by PCR testing that there is no more active virus on the farm, then your farm will be released from that quarantine, and you'll be able to either sell mink, market skins, move manure off your farm, all those things that you would do in a normal fashion. So,
all right. If there's no other questions for John, and I'd like to thank him for all he does for the industry. And also, I just want to mention one thing. The rancher services that we use, where we have the three veterinarians, John being one, Hugh Hildebrand, and also Jason Lott. It's probably one of the services that gets used the most in the industry, and it's worked out quite well for us. So, thanks to those guys for what they do. And then with that, I think we're a little bit ahead of schedule, which is good. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Ryan Holt. He's our representative to the IFF from America. And Ryan?
Thanks, Bob. Mike's going to do a first little thing here as we get started, then he'll turn it back to me.
I'll do my first little thing here. Yeah, I just wanted to say hey to everyone. Look, it's been a hell of a year, right? I think we all understand, and all are ready for 2020 to be over with. I mean, obviously, this COVID-19 has really changed the landscape to the tune of something that we've never seen, right? And I think the impacts will forever be felt. And what's funny is, like, when I first took this job, that was one of the things I mentioned to you all in 2019, that, you know, I kind of was used to being in an industry that was under attack, and really looked forward to, you know, hitting this you know, point, and then recognizing and realizing that there's only one place to go, and that's up. And I really believe that this industry, as well as others, right? It's not just us, as well as others, has really seen that point. And I think we must look at this as an opportunity somewhat, you know, if you can do such, right? Because it's definitely hard to, at times, see the forest before the trees, and this is definitely one of those moments. But I think we must continue to be optimistic and look at this as somewhat of an opportunity to regroup, to come back together and figure out our next steps. And I really think that's where we are, as both an industry as well as IFF Americas and IFF London moving forward. So really wanted to kind of, kick that off and really tell you all I understand what's going on, you know, out there. Obviously, we're all, you know, impacted, and you know, once again, we're going to get through this thing together. But the only way is together, and that's, you know, remaining tight, remaining guarded, and you know, obviously having goals with the next steps, where we want to go and where we see ourselves in the future. So, you know, with that, I'll turn it back over to Ryan, and then from there we'll go into a brief presentation. Obviously, Michael Whelan and Bob and others have really, you know, touched on a lot of key points, and we'll just give a little more detail, myself and Melanie. So, Ryan, I'll kick it over to you to kind of give some additional highlights and updates.
All right, thanks, Mike. First off, top of the page I've got is looking at what we've done, tried to do financially. I know Michael's been key in helping get everything moving with the idle PDP and most recently the CFAP program. Also need to throw consideration out to Joan Galvin, who's our FINA guest. That's the investment that we've made in FINA, and she's been outstanding as far as directing and making connections and providing Michael and myself with the people to talk to get, especially the CFAP done. It was a lot of hard work. We were told it wouldn't happen 3 different times, but we ended up becoming successful at that. So the reason I mention that is that now everybody's got a little unexpected cash coming in. I know it's not near enough, but the PAC, Political Action Committee, that we have through FINA, desperately low. If anybody's got a little bit of change that they can throw around, especially when we're in this last little run up before the election, it would be nice to get some money sent in. Contact with myself or with Mike Brown, and we can direct you as to what to do, and also Larry Lastoff in Washington. So that's my little pitch for FINA. As far as issues go in the country, yes, we've had some struggles. California's been an up and down situation. Fortunately, it's California, and they always have more garbage than they can handle anyway. So we've been able to sneak a little curveball in San Francisco. We'll see how it goes. I think we're more or less looking at a long play there. If we can get the state to move, that might be better for us. We had victories, Mike helped me, but we had victories in Hawaii and Rhode Island. Where was the others?
Built a strong foundation for an upcoming fight in Connecticut as well.
Yep. The most important one, though, I think, was New York. And everybody comes off and says that how we spent too much money. I get this all the time from the guys in Europe, is that we spent too much money in New York, that we shouldn't have put so much in there, that we mismanaged it, or we spend things where we didn't need to. But I'm going to tell you right now that everyone I talk to that's in politics in New York City has never seen anybody beat the speaker at his own game. So you need to take a little pride in that we were able to deflect enough away that the speaker backed off. They never do that, ever, in the history of the city council. Now, the reason I mention that is because of situations that, for whatever reason, the Speaker of the House, Corey Johnson, was slated to run for mayor, and he was a shoo-in. They had him pegged. He was going to be the guy. No matter what happened, he was going to be the guy. Well, we come in and did our deal, and I'm not saying we're responsible for it, but we at least established ourselves as a formidable opponent. We got news a couple of days ago that Corey Johnson is withdrawing his bid for mayor for New York City. He's not going to go after the office. And now the front runner is it Adams, Mike?
Eric Adams.
Eric Adams, yes. And he's friendly towards us. Mike's got several connections into his office. I think we might be able to turn a corner for New York City. And by doing that, it relaxes us a little bit so that we can pursue New York State and get some finality, get some progress, get some positive news out of this thing maybe in this next upcoming year, since this year's pretty much been a bust for anybody doing anything legislatively. So we've been very active at the IFF Americas. Looking forward, we're struggling just as everybody else is because of the COVID, because of the restricted funds. Now things have finally moved forward a little bit. I know you saw Michael's report on the financials for him. Of course, they were, as he suggested, they were September to August financial. The sales predominantly picked up in September, October, as everybody knows. So his funding will certainly become more available. The funding in IFF itself, since it's based on a percentage instead of a flat fee, has suffered quite a bit, quite dramatic in the funding, and so we've been able to support some of our lobbying efforts and being able to keep on top of the political action, but we haven't been able to have any money to be able to push back out into the members themselves. That might change by the time we get to the year end, depending on the clearances and depending on how budget situations work. But we're definitely seeing an impact from that, as well as the major impact for us here in North America is losing, like we said, losing 2 auction houses in ALC and NAFA last year, being short several $100,000. All of us. In fact, IFF was short close to $3 million by the time it come down to it. So there's probably a very slim to none chance that they'll see any of that money back. And so it did put quite a restriction on available funds to go back into programs. That being said, we're doing the best we can. We're struggling through. We're bare bones in it. We're beating up on our consultant fees quite heavily. In fact, I'm surprised some of them stay around. We've beat them down so far, but it's a good situation for us. Looking forward, I think politically in America, as well as we try to reach ourselves up into North America up into Canada as much as possible. Tom will give you a little feedback on that, I think, later on in the program. So with that, there have been developments in Europe this last few months, last few days actually. Poland has decided that they want to eliminate fur farming. It's about a 90% chance that it's going to happen. It's actually, reading this morning again, they're driving a division into the government even over this thing, versus farming versus cities, and there's all kinds of threats being thrown back and forth. But according to IFF this morning, talking to Mark Bowden, mind as you watch what goes on in the next few months and the year with these farms closing down and whatnot, especially being forced out in Europe, as some of them have already been inquiring in North America's in our region as well as in Canada. I know there's been some inquiries in Canada in the Nova Scotia region from people looking to maybe buy existing farms. So we are actually, believe it or not, we're actually in a safer position politically farming than most anywhere else in the world at this point. One other thing that's happening in Europe, well, in England, now that they don't think they're in Europe anymore, is there's a retail ban that's been pushed around. Unfortunately, Michael Mosier, who used to work for IFF years ago, was let go because of whatever reasons, has decided that he can maybe carve a niche for himself on the animal rights side. So some of you have seen him in print. They're quite concerned over it, although he has come off pretty much as a disgruntled employee and been given that lack of notoriety because of that. So it seems to maybe be a flash in the pan. It depends on what happens, probably more locally in Parliament than London and England when they try to go through this proposed retail ban. COVID in Europe has been resurging in the public eye as well as it has been here. They've had 20 farms, Doc, I don't know if you've heard this yet or not, there's been 20 farms break in the last week in Denmark. So they're quite concerned that it's migrating itself south. Once again, they've got one researcher over there that thinks he's determined that COVID can go back into the human population, which I don't understand why there wouldn't be, why that wouldn't happen. But predominantly these things are being spread either by feral cats or by the help moving in. When it gets into a farm, you'll know you have it within 2 days because you'll be picking up 50 or 60 or 70 mink a day. If you do see it, like Doc suggested, make sure you get a hold of your health professionals and get some diagnosis so that they can get some testing done. Ignoring it's not the way to go on this one for sure. Other than that, we do have a situation that we need to work on as IFF Americas as well as Fur Commission and the CMB with the funding of inspections. We had an agreement almost hammered out between CMB and Fur Commission to address our surrogate there, to try to get in to put pressure on Fur Europe to make sure that we get that money out. All of that money has gone to Fur Europe this year because there's no contract between us and the auction houses to collect that money. The contract only existed between Fur Europe and the auction houses. So we had applied to get that money back out. Some of you will remember that at that point, they told us that the money might become available if we were to move into the welfare program, which we beat up. We've talked about it. We've tried to make some concessions to try to see if they would do the same. They haven't necessarily been reciprocal as far as making adjustments or trying to address our needs. They came out day before yesterday, and have offered a transition period of 2025 now instead of 23. We were hoping to get to 2030. I think SAGA put forth a 2030 number on adapting to welfare standards. They also come out with that during that period that they had a reduced pen size requirement. Beforehand, they had no pen size requirement, but somebody over there has decided that somebody over here is raising mink in 8-inch by 8-inch pens. I don't know what they're thinking, but they decided they had to come up with a minimum requirement that they're going to be applying this year. So just be cognizant of that. I think our stance is going to be, and we've talked about this on the CMBA call the other day, of reverting back to the fact that our program and the Canadians program has been accepted by Furmark. It's been vetted. We went through everything they've asked to do. So we feel like we've qualified. It's once again more of a housekeeping issue for auction houses to decide how they're going to handle us. So we'll let them do that. That's their business. But I don't see anybody not wanting to do business with us. Let's put it that way. So, other than that, we've had several meetings with IFF on Zoom and on more or less with the management, trying to make sure that they understand where we're at and who we are, because of the fact that Fur Europe's influence has doubled or tripled since we don't have an auction house anymore. It's been increasingly hard to maintain any kind of balance in the conversations as they sometimes feel like they can just dictate what happens to the whole group. So, the only thing I can come back with there is what we haven't, knock on wood, we haven't lost any provinces, we haven't lost any states, the farming bans. So they probably got to worry about their own house before they worry too much about ours. Other than that, if anybody's got any questions or something I might have missed, Mike, I don't know if I missed anything.
Oh, no. That was basically it as far as, the politics of things. I think you summed it up well. I think the reality is, there were no fur bans under our watch in 2020. And really the 2012, the end of 2019 and 2020. And a lot of that had to do with the hard work done by the folks on this phone. I really do believe that, our farmers, ranchers in this community is really the life's blood of the industry, right? I think when I have conversations with legislators and elected officials from both city, state, and federal, they want to hear more about what you all are doing, right? That's the story they want to hear more than anything else. And I think you all continue to give them, the story that's needed to be heard, so that we can avoid some of the issues of the past and kind of the trend that's going on in Europe. So, once again, Michael, Whelan, and others, thanks so much for your hard work. And like I said, really, you guys are the life's blood of this industry. And I know I can, really turn to you all and count on you all for capacity as well as, a voice in these respective fights. We've also finishing up the last touches on a new coalition we've put together called the Natural Fibers Alliance. So I need you all to be on the lookout for that. It's called the Natural Fibers Alliance, which would include a number of members of the animal use industry, to include, obviously the mink, and we're having conversation with the alpaca folks and some of the exotic fur-bearing organizations like the alligator, snake, and some of the others to form a tight-knit coalition that would provide some air cover and an additional voice, for advocacy issues. I think, once again, we all kind of got out. We did a great job in 2020, but 2021 is coming right around the corner. As Ryan mentioned, Corey Johnson, the Speaker of the New York City City Council, has decided he's not running for mayor, but he's still a member of City Council and he's still the Speaker. And with that, he still yields some power. So the potential of a fur ban in New York City is real. It's just as real and probably even more real, considering what just happened and what continues to happen in EU. Now, obviously, he recognizes that he got punched in the nose, and nobody wants to get punched in the nose more than once. But it's still something that's out there, and still something we have to, continue to think about, much like the state of Connecticut and some other places. So there's going to be a need for a Natural Fibers Alliance to once again provide some of that air cover, as well as provide an additional voice and a coalition of sorts, of like-minded individuals. So be on the lookout for that. I'll be reaching out to Michael Whelan from some assistance, as well as FINA, members of FINA, to help us as we put the final touches. We've got the website developed. We've got some partners identified. We've once again reached out to a number of different players, and are having ongoing conversation with those folks as we once again finalize the Natural Fibers Alliance. So with that, I think the next step, we got a couple minutes left, is turning it over to Melanie, who handles a lot of our, the Canadian relations, and doing a number of projects, up there. So Mel, if you can just give a short kind of update on where we are with some of that provincial legislation, and then go into the fashion sustainability piece right after that.
Sure, sorry. Provincially, we're doing, in Canada, we have 3 provinces that have enacted animal terrorist type legislation similar to AETA, although they don't use the term terrorist. And we have a 4th province that is doing it now. So that's pretty much 4 down, 6 to go, and a couple of territories. But we're slowly making our way through the various houses and trying to get some of this legislation passed to better protect our farmers. So that's happening with that. We're also working very hard on removing some of our interprovincial trade barriers, as well as some of the trade barriers in the United States. So that's been a big focus of ours this year. And so we're working with the government on that. And I'm not sure if anybody pays attention to Canadian politics, but in our most recent throne speech, we had some success because the government mentioned that that was one of their key priorities. So it looks like we are making some headway there. I can go into the fashion campaign. Michael, do we have an ability to bring up the presentation? Michael Whelan?
Yes. Excuse me, I had to find that mute button. Yes, Jason, can you bring it up?
Okay,
There
so
we
not,
go.
all right, so I'm not sure, I don't think I can move it forward. Can we move it forward to the 4th slide, I believe it is? Okay, so in 2018, the IFF started rebranding our fashion campaigns. We started with responsible, natural fur, the responsible choice, and year by year, each campaign that we do, we've been adding on to it. So this year, the message is sustainability. The videos are fabulous. I'm going to show them to you as we go to the next screen, but I want you all to know that all of this material that we have is all available to you. So I'll take a look at the video and then we can go from there. Go ahead, Jason. Is there sound? So it's missing the sound, but I'll let us watch it anyways.
Can you all not hear it?
No, that's okay. So we'll move on to the next slide. This happened before with the CMBA. I think it's a bandwidth problem. But so we have this video. We have 2 different videos. One is, I believe, 30 seconds. The other one is 90 seconds. All of these materials are available, and we encourage you to share. If we can stop at that page, Jason. All of these images are available. We also have images of just coats on their own, all of these pieces on their own, and other images. The great part about this campaign is that you can share them simply right now without worrying about taking the model, taking the photographer. The only credit you have to do is use 2 hashtags, slow down and reconnect. And you might have 50 followers on your Facebook or 50 friends, or you might have, 300. But, every extra set of eyes that sees one of these pictures, that sees one of our videos, is another person that's getting the message about first. I guess what I want to drag home is FCUSA and CMBA and all of our organizations, both in Canada and the United States, are using these materials, but it's also really great if you guys would also use them whenever you have a chance. I can send the link to Michael and he can distribute it to everybody after the meeting if anybody has an interest. So that's our campaign. The message is reconnect, slow down, and we're still in the midst of it. And as soon as Jean-Pierre has some stats, we will let you know. You will see it in the United States. There are some editorials paid for in Vogue and some other magazines. So it's not just an online campaign. There will be some print to it. So keep a lookout for that. Next slide. Jason. Okay. Also, we have a supporters group. Next slide. You can go to the IFF website and sign up for a supporters group. And this happened as well. I'm not sure if the pictures will come up. But again, in this supporters group, we have videos, we have latest news, we have events, we have tutorials on how to go about doing things on Instagram or social media. And as well as you can see, we have our fashion library. And as well, I forgot, sorry, the communications material. So all those little sayings down there, you can use them on all your social media. There's the one that you see right now is with respect to wild fur, but there are communications materials that are simply about farmed fur. Next slide. So we had a FirmMark call with Mark Oaten on September the 2nd, and Paul Stockel was on there with respect to where we're at with FirmMark. So my job in FirmMark is to tell you sort of what are the materials we have to promote FirmMark. Anything other than that would be a Brian or Michael question or Mike Brown question. So the next slide, we can show you some of the materials that we have that you can use. So FirmMark will have a will have a label, it will have a hash, a hang tag, and it will also have a QR code. So someone that is shopping for a FirmMark garment can simply scan the QR code and trace their fur, from the producer yourselves through to the auction, to the dresser and dyer, to the manufacturer, and then to the retail sector. So that should all be able to be traced. So we have an image library full of images that you can use. Next slide. And as well, we're going to be having a new website and some video content coming up. The website, I'm not exactly sure when it's launching, so stay tuned, but some of the videos are available now. I do have a video that for FirmMark that I can send to Michael Whelan that you're all welcome to use. And I have a few other communications materials that came out last week. We have communication materials for legislators and politicians, and we have communications materials for the downstream sector of our trade, for the retail sector. So we have all of these materials and we're using them as best we can. And we simply ask that if you know, individual fur breeders associations, if you have any sort of social media presence, even if you just, you know, on your own, please share, because the more people that see it, the better. They say it takes a person 17 times. They have to see something 17 times to remember it. So like I said, we need all of you. It takes a village. And I believe that's it. I'm not sure though, because I'm not controlling the slide deck. Yes, so I went off through that. So I do have the FirmMark briefing that I will share with Michael, and you're welcome to use that at your own discretion in your meetings with mayors, you know, councilors, senators, whatever you need. And they can also be changed. I also will be printing a few here, so if you need some printed, please let me know. Next slide. I believe that's the end, but yep. I just wanted to touch on one more thing. Ryan had mentioned about the situation in London. Michael and I have Mike Brown, sorry, and I have a call this week with London, and we're working on getting. I'm working on getting the Canadian High Commission in London involved, and Michael's working on getting some letters from government over in the United States. So we are actively working on this file over here. So if you have any concerns or politicians that you know, friendly politicians we can reach out to, please do let us know. And other than that, does anybody have any questions?
Thank you so much for that, Mel. Just lastly, I just want you all to know, you know, look, the reality as IFF America and as we, you know, look to build this Natural Fibers Alliance, you know, our number one priority is going to be, you know, continuing to protect and maintain our collective ability to compete in the marketplace, right? Like that's what it is we do, and that's what we're here for, is to open up that position and keep it open so that, you know, you all are able to, you know, make money and obviously support your respective livelihood. So that's what we're here, and we're going to continue to do that, you know, until the wheels fall off. But, you know, I've had a great time this past year and look forward to the rest of 2020 and 2021. So that is it. Turn it over to you, Bob and Michael.
Well, thanks for that report, Ryan and Mike and Melanie. Appreciate that. If we could now, probably we'll move forward. And if Tom, if you're available, Tom McLellan, he's the president of the CMBA, and he is going to do a short presentation of what's going on in Canada. So Tom.
Bob,
are
this
you
is
there?
Bob. This is Michael Whelan. Tom's trying to get on right now. So in the meantime, is there any of our participants that have any questions about anything we've talked about so far? If you do, just unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hey, Michael.
Yes. Hey, Paul.
It's Paul. Question for the folks from IFF. What's their sense now? You know, we focus on the big fashion houses and how they view the fur industry. What's the, you feel like we're gaining ground there, or have you had any more defections, or what's their attitude towards our industry at the moment?
Mike, you want me to take that?
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
I think it's pretty much at a lull. Everything's at a lull. Everybody's reconfiguring what they're doing because nobody's shopping. Everybody's buying online. The name brands aren't necessarily meaning as much. The big problem that we have especially in luxury, is the fact that people don't go out. They're not going out. They're not going to the plays. They're not going to the movies. They're not going out for whatever reasons. Well, hopefully that'll change somewhat soon. But if people aren't going out, they don't necessarily buy luxury items. There's nobody to show off for. So that's the one issue. The other issue with the big brands, especially with LVMH and these guys, is that they own a lot of producing farms. So the precious that they deal with and whatnot, they own those farms themselves. And so they're actually looking to us as an example to give them a template so they can build programs for their own internal use. So the partnership there has been very good. I think primarily though, that we've said this 100 times, and this is how we started the Fur Commission out back in 1988, 87, was the governmental communication. And the fact that we're able to show self-regulation, or show that we don't need to have farm inspections by government officials that don't understand anything what they're looking at anyway. So, you know, it's another example of that. It took the Europeans 40 years to catch on. But hey, I think we've all earned our position as far as representing our industry and having the industry represented to especially the local governments, so that they are not peeking into our backyard. That was one of the reasons that talking with Dr. Easley and these farms that were affected with the COVID, that we wanted to portray avenue of communication, so that we had that ability to show that we're trying to help, but we're trying to assist to solve a problem, not trying to shut our doors and be mysterious. So, you know, that's just who we are, I think. Paul, I think moving forward, it's going to be even more advantageous for us to participate as we try to branch out and try to bring in other groups, not only as cover, but as partners to communicate their needs as well as our own. That's why Mike, and as you know, with this Natural Fiber Alliance that he's trying to put together, is going to be beneficial to all of us in the long run.
I've got a question for Mike. This Natural Fiber Alliance is really intriguing to me. Is this going to include, say, cotton and fibers that are grown as agricultural crop, or is it just going to be animal-based fiber?
You know, so we wrestled with that, and I've gone through 2 or 3 reiterations of the website. I mean, the natural ally you would think would be the cottons and the hemps and, you know, some of those other type, you know, quote unquote fibers. I mean, they technically do fall into that world. So I'm still on the fence about that, and I'd love your input. I do know hemp specifically, you know, is some low hanging fruit, and I've got some friends, you know, within that industry, and you know, it is a growing industry in which there's a number of folks who, you know, are looking to join whatever they can to make their lives even, you know, easier as well. And I think when you look at some of those other guys, it does give us some additional cover besides just focusing on animal use. So it is a conversation that we're having. Right now, we're basically in the infancy, meaning we have had multiple conversations with folks we knew, right, which would be some of the exotics because we have relationships. But that is something I'm thinking about, and I'd love to get your opinion.
Okay. Thank you.
I was wondering, this is Dennis Reese. I was wondering if you looked at anything on getting any help with funding in that during this, any more help with this during this bad time where we're losing a lot of money as far as with the government or banks supporting us a little better. Seems like the banks are just shutting us down. They don't, we're not producing profit, so they're wanting out right now. I was wondering if there any pressure we can put on any of them or what.
Well, this is Michael Whelan. I'll start with this one. There is more aid packages winding away in Congress, but I don't think anything's going to pass until after the election, and how that gets divvied out has not been determined. Ryan or Mike, do you have any input on that one?
Well, there's one more program, CCC program, which actually tobacco got a bunch of their funding out of this last whack, that we can go for. The main thing for us, the main accomplishment for us is to be actually included on a list. Once we've got our hands in there, we can kind of manipulate around and find other avenues for funding. There might be a way to access more money than us. The thing that I've been trying to work on this week is to try to get access into USDA, which we're working on through our legislative members. To one of the deficiencies that I see in visiting with them and trying to see where they're at is that they have these archaic limits that don't necessarily apply to us, since we have most of our producers throw quite a bit higher balances than they like to see moving around, as well as they're not necessarily adjusting to the fact that this is an emergency situation. It's a FEMA situation. It's no different than a tornado or anything else. Or if somebody had, when the mad cow thing came about years ago, they accessed FEMA money for a lot of that. So there's still programs that we can work on. The problem is that they all take time, and we're trying to deal with everybody's trying to make decisions, I know, in the next 2 months. But it's a race, and we're making calls every day. I wish I'm sure, well, you know how I am. I'm half the day on the phone trying to chase things down and chasing Mike, and we're doing things as fast as we can. But it's a big world out there, and sometimes it gets a little bit overwhelming.
And just to add to that point, I think once again that's another reason why we're looking at the Natural Fibers Alliance to provide that additional voice. I thought one of the things I saw during our outreach and efforts with elected officials, during that PPP time period, before we were able to get Department of USDA and others involved, was finding another voice. And I think oftentimes, if you can't find another voice, you have to build another voice. So that's another one of the benefits of Natural Fibers Alliance, is providing that additional voice. And once again, some advocacy and air cover via social media to put some pressure on, some of these elected officials and, some of these other interests. And let me just say this last point, because I know, it's getting late, but the reality is the legislative landscape is going to change in 2020, regardless of who wins, the presidential election. If Donald Trump wins, you can expect cities to go further left. If, Biden or Kamala Harris win, you can expect state governments to go further left or further right. It just depends. But whatever it is, 2020 is going to force people to go further in multiple different directions. As well as with COVID-19 really changing the game in terms of how we engage and how we interact. I mean, Ryan and Michael both know that, right now it's damn near impossible to get in contact with an elected official unless you've got their personal phone number. The emails and all are great, but you're going to have a personal contact into a lot of these offices. And if you don't, you've got to create that via social media. And that's what we're looking to do, really create some of that buzz and, finding ways to go, viral and finding ways to put some pressure on these guys via online digital campaigns that are super cheap and just as effective. But once again, that's just us modernizing in a sense and walking into 2020, being prepared for whomever takes office. So just wanted to also include that point. That was it for me.
All right. Michael, do you know, is Tom available or did he get on?
We're trying to get him on right now. He's having some issues.
Right now, Michael, I can see him on, but I don't think he can hear us yet.
Okay. Perfect timing.
Do we want to, oh, is he ready?
I don't think he has sound yet, Bob.
Okay. Well, you think he'll be on pretty soon, or should we skip ahead, or what do you want to do?
He's on now, I think. Tom, can you hear us?
He's on now?
Yes, now I can hear you, and I'm in finally. That was confusing.
Oh, good.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Well, I had
Hey, that's
trouble
no
myself,
problem.
so.
No problem at all, guys. That's what happens with our modern technology.
So Tom, we're going to turn the meeting over to you for your presentation. And like I mentioned, Tom is the current president of the CMBA. And go ahead, Tom.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. It's great to be part of your AGM, and it's much appreciated, the invitation. Just, I guess, to start off with, the state of our industry. In regards to the size of the industry, we're like the rest of the world, where our numbers are dropping. I think at present we have 70 farms, and there'll probably be approximately 850 to 900,000 pelts come out or be processed this year. And the industry continues to try to get funding from government programs. To this point, with no luck on any special funding for the mink sector. Some of the main reasons for this is there are already programs out there for agriculture, and two of them are like advanced payment program, the APP, and oh, there it is. Which allows the farmer to get 50% of last year's prices. And last year on the 2019 crop, it was 1840 Canadian. And the first 100,000 is interest-free, and the remainder is at a small amount over prime. So that's one of the programs that's available. And fortunately, just the other day, we've been offered a stay of relief on that program, and what that amounts to is basically any mink that you have unsold that normally would have to be paid back to this program by the end of October, you have a year to sell them and pay it back, and with no penalties. So anybody that's got mink left over, they won't have to pay that back until, if they don't sell them until next year, which is fairly important with the way things are going. And another program which is involved in is agri-stability, and it pays you back 70% of your loss over a 5-year gross margin average. So when the prices were big and the numbers dropped pretty quick, a lot of guys were able to access that program. But now that your gross margins over those 5 years are pretty even, there's not much money there to be had. So that's our two programs. There's been some government relief just as far as wage stability, and a lot of the farmers haven't qualified for that, and it's COVID things. So that's been disappointing, but we're working on it. But and I guess if I had to make a guess on how many farms will be left next year, in my opinion, it'd be somewhere around 40 or 45, with possibly 500,000 mink or kits to come out of the country. And that could become less depending on early signs of any sales before breeding and before whelping time. And I think if there's no signs of recovery, that number will probably drop. That's kind of where we're at with numbers and funding. The Canadian Code of Practice continues to be accepted, with well over 90% of our farms being third-party audited. And at this point, second and third period audits are also taking place. And with no funding available from the auction house, CMB has agreed to fund 50% of the audit and the farmers the other 50%. It's very unfortunate, but we believe our code is, in its process, is very, very well done. So CMB will not let this fall on the wayside. Other things that are of interest in our industry, animal rights is still putting on a lot of pressure. There's 3 provinces that have put special bills in for trespassing bills, and we'll see how they work out. But they're still right on our back door. We haven't got any actual big city bans being pushed anywhere like New York or what you guys have had down there. But they're still definitely active. And also CMB has been working with CFIA, Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and the chief veterinarian officers from all the provinces in regards to the COVID situation in farm-raised mink. And I know as we all know, it's an issue. Something we have to stay on top of it. So we're working closely, just like you guys did down there, with your government officials. And yes, myself, I believe personally, there is going to be a future in this industry, and we will turn that corner, in my opinion. So, in conclusion, I just like to wish everybody a great year for the rest of the year. Thank you for the invitation, and hopefully for better results next year. And anything else anybody'd like to touch on or questions, I'm open for it right now.
Tom, this is Bob Zimbal. Have you had any farms that have tested positive for COVID? Anywhere the mink have tested positive?
No, nothing as of yet. I mean, guys have been informed that, if you see high losses or losses of the, with the respiratory things, to make sure they go in to a vet or to the colleges, Guelph and wherever else. And as of yet, we have no.
All right. If there's any other questions for Tom. All right, Tom. Well, thank you, and thank you for your time and giving us update what's going on in Canada.
Okay, appreciate it, and I will make sure I get this. I didn't get it in yet, but I'll send my presentation in to Michael, so you got it for your minutes of your meeting.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, everybody.
Was there a question? Did somebody try to ask the question, or? Maybe not.
I'm still here. I thought, yeah.
I was just going to ask him to repeat how many ranchers he figured there'd be this next year. 40 to 45?
I said 40 to 50 is what I think I said. Somewhere between 40 and 50.
And under 500,000 mink?
No, I guess no more than 500,000 would be my guess.
And there was 800,000 this year, or 9. What was that?
Between 850 and 900,000.
Okay, thanks.
That's significant.
You're welcome. All right.
All right. Well, thanks again, Tom. And
Tom, one more
we-
thing, Tom.
Oh.
Can you walk them? Do you want to walk them through the situation with board? I mean, you had elections again, and first off, I'd like to make sure you get your props for doing as much as you have for us, especially across the border and being the chair.
Okay, I can do that. I will just, we did have our elections last week. I'm no longer the president. Matt Moses, I think a lot of you will know him, a bright young fella from Nova Scotia, is the president, and Rob Ballard is vice president. I'm no longer on the board. That's there was decisions made and back and forth, and I definitely respect the CMB board's decisions, and we'll move forward from there.
Tom, what were the there was a controversy on board positions? Is that what it was?
Well, I mean, there's can be a lot of different things, but it was a position that I took on board members and not raising MINC anymore. And that's, you know, I think it's really, this isn't the time or place for the whole discussion, but in my opinion, and that's where it went, and decisions were made, and everybody respected everybody's decisions, and that's where we're at.
Well, I didn't mean to put you on a spot. All I wanted to do is make
Nope.
sure people understood as the rumor mills start to flow that, you know, you've earned the respect of everybody, I think, on this call, and that we admire your taking a stand for how you think should be done. Think things should be done. That's all.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, Tom. Well, Tom, thank you for your presentation. And I'd also like to personally thank you for all the work you've done on behalf of the mink farmers of Canada and for North America. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, then we will go into our next segment with the auction houses to give their reports. We will start with SAGA and then do AME separate. I don't know who's presenting for SAGA, but or if there's multiple people doing it, but if we can basically concentrate about talking about what your company does instead of taking the time to bash the competition. So if we could start with SAGA, and do we know who's doing that?
Yeah, Charlie Ross here. We are going
hi,
to
Charlie.
try to stretch, hey Bob. So we're going to try to stretch Zoom technology today. And I'm going to share this presentation. I'm in Albany, New York. Chris is in Staunton, Wisconsin. And Chalice is in Idaho, who's going to run the screen. So hopefully this will work. So maybe we could go right to the screen. Chalice, if you could share your screen. No. Okay, just run the slideshow from the beginning slideshow.
You see it all right?
Yeah, everybody see it now? So, you know, the world has changed. SAGA has tried to adjust to this pandemic and other conditions going on. We have a new CEO, Magnus Lung, who many of you know. He wanted to be on this, but this is past his bedtime at midnight, and SAGA has their board meeting starting at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Next slide. So start with a little background on the role of our company. We see our role to collect, to grade, and sell and finance the skins. The The board meeting that's taken place the rest of the week in Finland will make a determination on and how and if there are farm financing coming on. We will finance at pelting centers. We spend a lot of our time trying to market the products. But in answer to Paul's question earlier about the fashion brands, just to give you an example, LVMH, the largest fashion brand in the world, they reported a 72% decrease in their sales every place but China. So it's hard to sell product when the stores aren't open. And as Ryan said in his presentation, we need people to be able to travel. So without the travel, without the sales, we will suffer the rest of the year. There's no indication that this is going to be a great retail season any other place but in Asia. Next slide. So what happened this year at our auction is we had the COVID. We had difficulty getting the buyers in. We tried a pure online auction, which did not work. With travel restrictions, we were not able to get people really to go to Finland. And we started a new cooperation with the Finnish government. So actually, the recent sale, we had 70 buyers come to Finland for the sale. For each buyer, we provided an essential business travel permit, which meant that they could travel into Finland. At the time, they had to agree to quarantine for 14 days. The 14 days meaning between the hotel and the auction company. So we successfully were able to break some of the travel barriers, and the results were coming up soon, but we sold a better percentage of the mink, but still at unsatisfactory prices. Next slide, please. In addition to the auction, we have a global team at SAGA. We have agents in Canada, Greece, Korea, 5 offices in China, Hong Kong, Italy, Russia, and Turkey. And they're all trying to sell your skins. Primarily, we try to protect the auction because as we sell fur auctions, that's where we get competition in the room, and that's where we're going to get the highest prices. But due to the situation this year of not everybody attending the auction and the need to sell skins to put some cash in everybody's hands, we did open up our PT private treaty sales after, between, and during our auctions. The one thing that we have been very firm in our commitment here is that we are not selling below auction prices. So we don't want to encourage a buyer to sit in the room, not bid, and then run to the private treaty office and try to buy goods cheaper. In fact, in discussions with Magnus today, he's thinking of putting an additional euro on all PT sales. Next slide. There's always a lot of discussions on finances, and this time when everybody's suffering, SAGA being a publicly traded company, our numbers are always online, so you can check them. It's been a horrible year for us. Year to date, our total sales have been 150 million euros as compared to 19 where we did 332. Our turnover has been 11 million, and we're showing a loss this year of 12 million so far. That loss will be reduced in the next quarter because that incorporates all the grading and all the shipping that we did. But with that being said, we did not have a good year. But if you look at our retained earnings, we still have $57 million in the bank. We still have very strong relationships with our banks. So we feel comfortable that we have money to operate in the upcoming future and certainly to survive another rebound year until we feel that price in 2022 will still be around. Next slide, please. The mink world is changing dramatically. We think that mink production, including Europe, will be down close to 60% next year. There are many reasons for this. Obviously, it's the low prices. We could report that there have been close to 2 million mink culled in Holland because of the virus, because of COVID, 2 million out of the 3 million that we anticipated this year. We also heard today that there are 40 farms now in Denmark that have COVID and are investigating whether they'll be culled or not. So it's not an easy situation when we have meat prices at the lowest level since the early 90s in the last crash. And we realize that farmers are selling below feed cost. So that's not a sustainable business model. So we're doing everything possible to try to find new markets and new ways of using the fur. But we're seeing, and that was reported by Mike and Ryan and Melanie, that the politics continue. That when they think that the fur industry is down, the anti-fur groups are reorganizing and getting more enthusiastic. So there are serious bans being brought up daily, weekly, monthly. But right now we're very closely following the situation in Poland, which produces 6 million mink, in Ireland, where there are only a few farms, and in Lithuania. So this won't go away, and we as an industry have to continue to work together to fight the bans. I think we're coming to a point where we can't afford to lose any country or any mink. And Ryan also discussed earlier, there's now a proposed fur ban in London, and we've been actively engaged in providing information for the Parliament there. This fur ban in London is actually going all the way up to Boris Johnson. So it's a strong ban, a strong connection in the UK, and equally strong in what's happening in Poland. There seems to be some movement in Poland. The multiple trade associations in Poland have different propositions on the table. So there might be some sort of phase out period, because the original ban in Poland was 2021. So 15 million mink, down from a high of 90 million. The numbers in China are really unauthorized or uncertified, so I don't bring them up in the meeting. Next slide, please. What's really important to understand is that if we as an industry in North America continue, we have to be able to sell our mink together. And we'll talk more about welfare later. But the first thing that we did when we started our investment is to put together a SAGA North American Certified Collection and Catalog. The only requirement to be put in that catalog, where the majority of the skins we sell are placed to the buyers, is you have to have either a Fur Commission or a CMBA certification. In fact, this year, I think 98% of the skins in that catalog had a certification from either of the trade associations. And the only farms that did not were pelt outs. So the advantage of that is we stand united, we stand certified, we recognize the strong work that both trade associations have done here. It also allows skins from North America to be part of the SAGA traceability system, which we called STS. So now whether it's a fashion brand in China or in Italy or the US, they could trace their skins back to the country of origin and see that the skins were certified. I think that is a selling point. That is not up for negotiation. That's our future and our present. So even in this year of the COVID and the down sales, we have been able to maintain the level of certification requests. And in fact, now we can report that the number doubled this year. A little surprising to all of us. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Chris Vaughn for a little bit. Chris, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie, and thank you, Michael, and everyone here for allowing us to speak. COVID certainly seems to be at the top of the difficulties that we're all facing here, and that's across the board. As you can see from this chart, the numbers have continued to increase, and if you look at it, what's especially difficult is within the retail sector. And you can see in the western part of the world, North America and Europe specifically, the retail season has yet to even begin. But as these numbers increase, everyone has pivoted and changed, and we've done everything that we can to try to continue to market and sell your mink, as Charlie has mentioned earlier. The only light in the tunnel right now is that in China, it's at least reported to be under control, and online sales have started. I would say the only issue with that, we're glad to see that the mink are actually moving in this online platform. However, when you look at that, typically the sales and the consumer is looking more at a price point rather than quality. But at the end of the day, we're glad to see some mink that are starting to move, because if you look back on when this actually started, beginning late last year, it affected that entire retail season. Then of course came over, jumped the pond and came here in North America, and has had the tragic effect on all of us throughout the course of this entire season here. Next slide. If you look at, this is just our previous auction that we just wrapped up here in September. So we offered 5.6 million skins. We were able to sell 4.3 million of those. So overall sales percentage of 77%. You can see the breakdown there of the regular or the winter quality skins. 1.3 million of those were European, 61%, and then the North American winter quality was about 900,000 at 68%. If you look at kind of some of the tops, the Black Llama sold 78%, females 23%. We'll get into the slides a little bit more as it relates to who's buying, but you can see there specifically with the dark females, we just didn't have, it's twofold. Korea wasn't where we had really hoped that they would be. And also we had limits. We had direct discussions with our consigners, and in many instances the limits were in place. But again, not having anyone to really push the room physically there or with the online side of things on those dark females. And we definitely saw that as you can see at 23%. Look at the pastels, a little bit stronger number, 73% clearance on the males and 85% on the females. Looking at one other on the mahoganies, just on the last sales, about 43% on the mahoganies and 41%. So again, another variety there that unfortunately has had that continued struggle, auction over auction, and unfortunately year over year. Next slide. This is just a look at 2009 and 2020. These numbers here are specific to SAGA. If you look back at the price point, this is in USD from 2009, the 2009-2010 season. You can see right there at $48. Fast forward to the 1920 season, SAGA was at $16.90. However, we do see that price point that jumps up specific to North American mink, which has always held true. And we came in at 1920, which is what, $230 over the auction average. But a pretty clear picture that everyone is fairly aware of, that the struggles that we've had. Certainly you can see it here in the last 10 years. Next. I mentioned this one a little bit earlier. Now, you can see 89% of what we sell goes into Asia, 80% into China, and that 9% goes into South Korea. So, when you've got your most of your eggs in one basket, that's sometimes a difficult hand to play. It seems like we've talked about that eastern part of Europe, Russia, Greece, Turkey, and it's still about a 5% player within the game. And then Western Europe picks up that other 6%. But when you don't have that competition within the room, we've seen it, time and again, and that's where you start to see those struggles, certainly from a price point. Next one, Charles. Now, this probably the next 1, 2, 3, 4 slides or so. These price points are painful. Everybody knows that, and we've been saying that for quite some time. And the reason for the next 4 slides is simply just to show the trend, and we like to see an uptick. And in sales, anyone that's done sales, you can slice and dice a report to make it look however you want. And we could pick a ton of different varieties. We could pick a ton of different sizes. We could pick different clarities, velvets, etc. So what we want to do is just try to take some of the best mink, apples to apples, and just give you, since we don't have a full day to do this, just give you 3 or 4 slides that show you where we started to start the season, and where we were currently at with at least up to our final sale. And you can see that when we started the season, again, we had very, very low clearances to start the season. So from our side of things, in my opinion, that's where you start out with the higher price points. We instituted through the discussions with our board of directors and our accounts to institute kind of that hold on the prices and sacrifice clearances, of course. So you can see to start the season, you're up in the low to mid 30s. This specific, we took a 2-0 Black Llama male because in this instance, auction over auction, that's what we had the most of. But again, pick a size, pick a variety, and this looks slightly different as it relates to numbers, but you can see that the decline and then final uptick here. We started to see some things stabilize a little bit, and then also we saw a slight increase, not where we were in March, but an increase of where we were, since July. And I think Michael talked about that in the beginning, that it's nice to see some of these higher clearances when we're seeing in the 70s, 80s, 100% clearances on certain varieties, and a little bit more stable market. Next one. So it's the same thing. It's just Black Llama female size 1. You can see where we started at a high point, took a sharp drop. And then, I think part of it too is because both auction houses, were able to have live attendees. And I think that you see that too when you start to see those gains in the back half of these auctions. We weren't specifically relying on online bids, where we did have a room that it's weird when you're talking about 50, in one auction, 70 in another auction, to have that be the high point throughout the season, to have that many people bidding. But I think you can see it there that's where you did start to see that increase here. Next one. And then with the pastels, this one's a little bit weird. It's hard to try to do the analytics on it, but we used the 3-0 gold male on there, velvet 2 pale type. But you can see kind of up down, and that's just a difficult one to try to pattern. And some of that's based on the quantities, some of that's based on speculation, but you can see clearly the prices. The one undertone is that the prices are not anywhere near where we all need them to be. This is the last one here. We just did the size 1 females, and again, it held true with what the males did, kind of up down, and just a very difficult season. But again, the takeaway here is your price point isn't anywhere near where we need to cost of production. Go ahead, Charles.
Okay, so
I think Charlie will jump in again.
Yep. So here we go to the welfare story. I would say it's something that I deal with every day of the week, multiple hours. I could start off by saying, our industry, the farming industry, could only survive if we work together. There is a problem with welfare in that it was launched here incorrectly. There's a lot of mistrust over the process, a lot of mistrust on what they've been accomplished, and they're pushing it very strongly from Europe. But at these meetings, and especially with Magnus in control, you can rest assured that SAGA now is representing the U.S. farmers. He's sitting on all these boards now. He's sitting on all these meetings. And there's no way that we're going to allow welfare to come in and disrupt the flow of merchandise. As I said earlier, you could always sell, and we will continue to have the North American certified collection and catalog. But we do feel that welfare has some, advantages if we have an industry standard, but not if it's going to put undue financial pressure on farmers. So what our strategy right now is to work for a 10-year transition or grandfathering schedule. So we are taking a separate position from Copenhagen. KF is pushing for 2023, and SAGA is pushing for 2030. Now, this is a negotiation. This is unclear at the time on what the deal will be. But SAGA is actually having a board meeting tomorrow to solidify our position before we go back to FIR Europe. So the way SAGA certification uses welfare is we call our program SAGA certification with welfare inside. We don't give up our existing certification. We understand that it's a farm management system. We understand that it takes a look at a farm from fence to fence. We understand that welfare is only looking at some animals in the cages. So we do support finding a way to bring welfare here in North America, but not for 10 years and not something that would disrupt the way farmers have their activities based upon the reality of the finances. Next slide, Charles. FurMark that the IFF talked about is a different program, and it's more a political tool. It's more of a retail tool. The position in Europe flip-flops whether Fur Commission and CMBA is part of FurMark or part not. SAGA certification will be a part of it. SAGA certification is very similar to what Fur Commission certification is. We see no reason why the certification programs in North America cannot be part of the program as originally promised. You should know at a recent Fur Information Council of America meeting that the retailers and manufacturers are not going to move forward with FurMark with any enthusiasm if North American farmers are not part of the program. So it's again working together, and it's working downstream with the retailers and manufacturers that if we do FurMark and that becomes a label that's promoted, that it has to represent all factors of the trade in North America. Next slide, and I turn it over to Chris.
Yeah, I'll jump back on here. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about our operations. We will continue to work in Stoughton. All the North American skins, as they were last season, will be graded here in Wisconsin. We did renew our lease locally here. SAGA Furs is deeply committed to continue on and move forward with this North American operation. Our team is completely unchanged as it relates to our management group within our Canadian representatives and our U.S. representatives. If you tuned into our last sale here this month, you saw Vanessa Webster was able to travel to Finland. She was the first female auctioneer, certainly first female North American auctioneer to move skins in Finland. So that was very exciting for us. And next year, Brian Balaam will be able to. We hope. We don't know what these travel restrictions are going to do, but we at least know that Vanessa can get over there and be a direct representative as someone that has firsthand graded your skins, put them up, and then auction them off as well. So we're very excited about that and extremely hopeful and excited to get Brian over there as well. We do, Finland will be sending over some sizing equipment. It will handle sizing and coloring, which if anything streamlines the efficiency in which we can continue to move through those skins. We will still continue to nap and finalize all the skins by hand, but the sizing and coloring for everything, blacks won't be colored on there, but everything else will go through those equipments there. So we're excited to get that in place here very shortly. So, that just speaks to the long-term strategy as we talk about here as it relates to what we and what SAGA has invested and collected. And Charlie hit these same points in collecting, grading, selling your skins. Next one, Chalice. Again, just a quick overview here that we will collect and grade locally. Brian and Vanessa will be your North American auctioneers as we get into the next round of the sales season. As you can see, I touched on it on the last slide, but our management team locally here has stayed unchanged with Charlie as a general manager, myself as a business manager. Brian Balaam will continue to run the technical operations from a production side of things, and then he's got Jim Posh as well. And then George and Vanessa from the Canadian side are both production managers, and all of them we're all solicitors too. And then Chalice Hobbs runs our business intelligence and then handles some operations out west. The plus side to having this business intelligence and working with some of these IT systems is that we do have people that have been involved. All of us, most of us came over from, well, all of us, excluding Charlie, had worked for the previous North American outfits in former lives. And so like anything else, there's challenges and there's some things that we had to, from a North American standpoint, learn ourselves. So whether those are IT systems, whether those are communication systems and things like that. So, like anything new, that there are some challenges, and we absolutely had some bumps in the road, like everyone did, trying to deal with these types of things, from remote work to trying to get, hooked up in a home office to connect to Finland and having 8-hour delays. And that's not your problem, but in some instances it did become that way. So, from the business standpoint, I would just, I've talked to most everybody here, but again, just put out our apologies and our commitment to you if you had any issues with working with our IT systems, because I can tell you personally, I've struggled with those myself to try to get access to those. So we put it together very quickly. I'm absolutely proud of the team that we have and how quick we were able to get through and collect as many mink as we did, and to put those through this entire season was a tremendous effort. And we'll commit to picking up on some of those pieces that might have been not as readily available to you. And I think you'll see that, moving forward here. As it relates to, I'll go back one real quick there, Charles, thanks. Just to talk a little bit about this, because many of us, worked for NAFA coming into this, and that is sometimes a tough pill for people to swallow because of the bad taste that NAFA left in a lot of people's mouth, not just ranchers, but everyone in this industry, to employees as well. So just to be clear, there are agreements and there are, things in place between SAGA and NAFA, but, we have no financial obligation to NAFA or debt for that matter. We do obviously work with consignors that, that may have carryover from NAFA, and they may owe NAFA money, but, our commitment is certainly to the rancher, and we do what we can by helping them out to satisfy that balance through their own sales proceeds and working with them. But in no way do we have any financial debt or obligation to NAFA as it sits. And we run, completely independently and operate on our own. You can go to the next one, Chelsea. I think that's it for me, Charlie.
Okay, well, a little typo there, but I thought it was interesting to see, what SAGA offers as a full service, because we talk about everything we try to do for the auction. So SAGA Furs North America, we are a full service auction house. We collect your skins and we sell your skins. We have Vanessa from Canada, Brian from the US going to be auctioneers for the North American collection. If travel allows, maybe even George Vongas will go over and spot, as he did for the ALC. Contrary to what you hear, all our finances are public. You could go online and see it. We feel it's a very strong tool to have agents around the world, and we have a strong team of maybe 10 people in all the key markets, talking to the buyers, talking about our collections, and helping to facilitate their travel to Finland. Hopefully when the COVID situation is cleared, that won't be as important. We sit on the boards that are saving or working for our industry. We sit on the IFF boards. We communicate with the IFF Americas. We sit on the Fur Europe board. We sit on the Welfare board and represent North America. We sit on the Fur Information Council of America board. We sit on the board at FINA, which is our Washington, D.C. lobbying group that has been so successful in securing funds for the farmers. We were actively involved in fighting the fur bans in New York. I think Brian mentioned something about Corey Johnson removing himself from running for mayor. I think that's because we gave him a nervous breakdown. So that was a job well done. SAGA also was one of the complainants in the San Francisco lawsuit. So SAGA Furs North America actually sued the city of San Francisco for banning the sale of fur. And as a result, internet sales can't continue. We believe very strongly in a responsibility to train the next generation of designers and business leaders. So we work with fashion schools and we work with the MBA programs. We need the next generation to believe in our industry as much as we do. We do rancher financing. We have the Black Llama lease, which we're currently renegotiating. We are strong supporters and promoters of both Fur Commission and CMBA certification in our catalog, and we bring that up in discussions with the fashion brands because we are the voice to the fashion brands in the retail. We talk to the Fendis and the Diors and the Oscar de la Rentas and the Neiman Marcus and the Saks Fifth Avenue. If the retailer doesn't understand about fur and have confidence in what we're doing on the farm level, they're not going to push, they're not going to sell it. And in addition to our investment in Stoughton, we're a minority shareholder in WSP Pelting in Utah. So we feel that we put our money where our mouth is. We're here for the long run, and we're very proud of our participation in the trade associations helping the industry. Next slide. Next. So again, we keep on saying we collect, we grade, we sell, we market our finance with our strong independence, and the money that's in our bank account belongs to the company. That we have the ability to move forward. You know, we see this as a long-range investment. We didn't invest in taking this talented team from Wisconsin, renting the building, investing in a pelting center, if we didn't think there was a long-range plan for the fur industry to come back. So we're in it with you. We're in it together. And hopefully by in the near future, you know, and our plan is 2022, we could see prices that will be profitable again. In the final slide. And
yeah, we've got the hook here, but so I know we're really tight on time. So again, just wanted to say thanks.
I think you went. Maybe we can save the questions for. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Chalice, for putting together a good presentation. And now I will turn over the floor to AME, and I think Richie, are you going to do that?
Hi, Bob. This is Alan. I'm doing this today.
Oh, you're doing today.
Yes. You got the pleasure of me today.
Okay.
All right. Well, so let's see how I do in this Zoom meeting. It's my first one speaking, so I hope it goes well. First, I'd like to say that some of the things I might thank you. Some of the things I might say here might be a bit repetitive from the other speakers, but I will certainly try to move through those as quickly as I can. Good afternoon. I hope you and all your families are safe and healthy during this difficult period. I really appreciate you inviting me to speak today. This has been one of the most difficult seasons for all of us. We are still dealing with the last stages of overproduction in anti-fur. On top of that, the winter of 2019-2020 was one of the warmest on records in China, Korea, and Russia. Along comes COVID, and it's the perfect storm. And we're in the middle of that perfect storm. However, I hope and strongly believe the worst is over. The first reason is the auctions were scheduled to offer 30 to 32 million mink in 2020. As of August 20th, they had only sold 6 million. I do not need to tell you that in a normal year, 80% of the world's mink is sold by August 20th. Quite frankly, we were expecting a total disaster in 2021. We're expecting to sell another 4 to 5 million mink in September, a total of 12 million mink for the year. Therefore, a carryover of 20 million mink. Well, the fur industry being what it is, surprised me yet again. From the end of August to the end of September, the auction company sold 14 million mink. Yes, 14 million mink in 1 month. This huge demand, the most important factor in any business from China, was overwhelmingly positive. Instead of a carryover of 18 million mink, we can now expect around 8 million carryover. This is certainly a huge number, but much more manageable than 20 million. The second reason for optimism. The best-selling mink in the past month has been better quality short nap females, especially mutations. Earlier this year, we were told by all that China wanted commercial quality for fashion items and trimming. Better quality females selling at a premium today compared to medium nap is indicative of better quality full mink garments being used in fur retail stores in China again. This has always been an important indicator for the mink industry since I started in it. When a country goes commercial or cheap quality, it is a sign of bad things to come. It is very nice to see this month a premium on better skins again. The third positive reason I see has been discussed here already, but I would like to try to relate that to most likely a possible price increase in future years. As you all know, Holland, either through the culling of mink or the government closing the mink ranching business, there will be 3.5 million mink less raised next year. Denmark has gone from raising 18 to 20 million mink in 2018 to 14 million mink in 2019 to about 10 million mink being raised this year. It will obviously go down further in 2021. It has been touched on about Poland, what the situation is there. Poland, which raises 5 to 6 million mink. Currently, their president has signed a bill to ban fur farming. The Senate has approved it, and all signs point to their Congress approving this very quickly. The closing date proposed on the bill is for October 1st, 2021. We're not sure if that means they would raise mink in 2021 or not, but that closing date is very neither here nor there for what will happen next year. Nothing is 100% at this point, but there's a strong possibility of Poland not raising mink in 2021 or possibly in 2022. This is an extremely huge factor for the future price of mink. We as an industry in North America must closely watch this in the next month. To summarize production, Holland is no longer raising 3.5 million mink. Poland most likely will not be raising mink either in 2021 or 2022. Denmark has gone down from 18 million mink to most likely raising 8 million mink next year. We're looking at 11 to 14 million mink being raised in 2021 and 10 million mink in 2022. As a comparison to those numbers, China just bought 14 million mink in 1 month during a COVID year. I am betting on prices going up drastically. Slide 1, please. Michael, can we get that slide 1 on, please?
Yeah, Jason's on it. Stand
All right,
by.
thank you. Thank you. Here is a little bit more of the totals of the mink quantities going forward in our estimation. So we currently believe that there's about 5 million mink in farmers' freezers, not speculators, farmers' freezers that are still out there. The 2020 carryover, we believe, will be 7 to 8 million mink going forward. The 2020 production, as far as we understand, is between 20 and 22 million mink. 2021 production is much harder to put your finger on. How many ranchers are going out of business? What is happening in Poland? So it's really quite a lot. The more I think about it, it will be less than 12 to 14 million mink being raised next year. This chart shows that I estimate Poland's mink at 2.5 million mink next year and nothing the following year. So that gives a 3-year total of 56 to 57 million mink available for sale. On the chart to the right, I believe this is obviously this is all approximated numbers, but I believe the offerings at the auction will be something like this. In 2021, there will be about 22 million mink offered. In 2022, there will be about 16 million mink offered. In 2023, there will be 13 million mink offered. It's very possible that it will be less than that with larger pelt outs going on. Again, if you look at these numbers, this year China almost alone will buy 22 million mink. In the next few years, there will only be 15 to 17 million mink available. If you add in Russia and Korea coming back to the market, I only predict the prices to go up. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to switch gears here away from the future of the industry and how I see it being positive to a little self-promotion. What sets us apart? Which will be on each of the next slides. Communication, reporting, ranchers making the decision, sales platform, financial strength, advances, knowledge and experience, professional and experience grading by hand, and lower selling fees. I'm going to just get a bit of water here. Communication. The owners, myself and my two brothers, head graders Kurt Essman and Kurt Hall, as well as rancher rep Ralph Griffo, are always one phone call or text away. The owners, head graders, and Ralph are your reps. All of us are available 365 days a year from 7 a.m. until 11 p.m. at midnight. You get answers from us immediately. This is not an exaggeration. We communicate in good times and bad. If there is a problem, we face it. We don't duck calls or texts. Next slide, please. We pride ourselves on giving good reporting to our ranchers. Grade sheets are sent by email the day the group is finished grading. You therefore get to see your sizes, your quality, and your colors as soon as your group has been graded. Prior to the sale, we send by email our valuations based on the current market to all our ranchers and discuss the values at length with group leaders. Once the rancher makes the decision, we adjust the values based on the rancher's decision, and we resend the values if there are changes. After the sale, we immediately call, text, and email ranchers with details of what prices and percentage of their groups bought. Usually the next day, but depending on the PT situation and if a weekend, we send proceed reports. Next slide, please. Our ranchers are in charge. They are our bosses. We are in continued contact with our ranchers, answering their questions and giving them opinions about pricing, the current market, and how we feel about the future. Per the previous slide, the rancher has the ultimate input on how to value their skins. Our ranchers make the decisions about what to sell and when and at what price. Our ranchers have the final decision. Of course, not every small rancher can make their own decision. That is not how intersorts work. For the larger intersorts, we discuss with the larger ranchers in the group and then take the temperature of the medium to small size ranchers and come up with a plan accordingly. We are not a huge company. We don't have a board of directors making decisions for us. Each group of mink has its own board of directors, and that is the farmers whose skins are in the group. And that is the only board of directors that American Mink Exchange is beholden to. Next slide, please. Sales platform and financial strength. We sell at Copenhagen Fur, the largest mink auction in the world, which attracts more buyers than any other auction. This enables us to be more than competitive year in and year out. This has been proven throughout the years and years of selling, including this year on North American mink. We feel that Copenhagen will be a great sales platform in the years to come. As Poland and Holland get out of the mink business, we believe that Copenhagen and Denmark will be raising 80% of the world's mink. That is where the buyers will go for their mink. At the end of the last fiscal year, Copenhagen Fur's retained earnings were approximately $125 million. Going forward with the assumption that Poland is out of business, Danish mink will make up close to 80% of the European production. This will only strengthen our sales platform. Next slide, please. We are committed to paying processing for our ranchers. At this point, I'd like to just make one comment because it's not clear to me. Last week at the Canadian meeting, which was also on Zoom, the CEO, Magnus, announced absolutely no advances going forward. Today, we heard that there were advances going forward for processing from SAGA. So I would think that should be 100% clarified. We are committed to paying processing for our ranchers, and that you can write that down. We are currently working with KF and other financiers towards securing normal pelting advances in addition to the processing. We hope to have some good news in the next few weeks, but we will see what happens with this item. Everybody has got their own tight cash flows at the moment. So let's see where that one goes, but we are working very hard to secure that. Next slide, please. Knowledge and experience. Myself and my brothers have over 110 years combined experience in the fur trade, buying, making the auctions. Our family has been in the business for over 100 years. We know your product. We've seen it dressed. We've graded it. We've touched it. I know it like the back of my hand, and I know which buyers need it. We know the buyers. We know how they think and what they need. This is what we did. I can confidently say that there is no one in the fur industry more suited than we are to help meet the needs of the North American rancher. We're focused solely on the North American mink producers. We have no other agenda. We're not collecting European mink or foxes. Next slide, please. Likewise, our grading team is the most experienced in the world. Our team is led by Kurt Essman, who has been in the business 40 years, and Kurt Hall, who has been grading for 35 years. I'm going to interrupt myself real quick here. If I'm on a time constraint, I appreciate you letting me know. I would maybe skip one page if necessary. We grade in Logan, Utah, and will continue to grade there. We put our money where our mouth is and bought a building there at the end of 2018. We are not changing our grading style. Your goods will always be graded by hand, colored by hand, and napped in the traditional North American style by graders who know your merchandise like they know their middle name. One thing I would like to specifically point out about our grading. For the 2020 selling season, our goods graded out with more gold labels compared to SAGA's. We averaged approximately 10% more gold labels than SAGA on blacks and mahogany. The higher percentage of gold label is consistent with the grading of AME versus NAFA for the 2018 and 2019 season. Next slide, please. Selling fees. For the 2020 selling season, our selling fees were lower than the competitors. I have not seen their fees schedule this year, but I'm assuming once again we will have cheaper selling fees with money going directly into your pocket. I'm going to skip the next paragraph. I know everyone's been here a long time. Can we go to the next slide, please? Let's talk about pricing just a little bit. The market is the market. You should go to the auction company that you're the most comfortable with. Prices are, over the years, they'll be generally the same. I feel I'll get you a slightly higher price over the years, but as I say, the market is the market. For years, we have heard various auction companies claiming that they consistently and badly beat other auction houses in terms of pricing. This is a fallacy. While I believe KF is the best place to sell, I'm not going to stand here and say we're going to badly beat SAGA every sale on every item. The same buyers go to the auctions, usually a few weeks apart. The buyers are not stupid, and they know the goods. Of course, slight fluctuations can be seen due to slight differences in qualities, but this is due to timing and market conditions as well. If it is rising market on certain items, you are better to sell last. If the market is saturated and falling, you are better to sell first. I am sure you're tired of auction companies talking how their prices are the best. I am almost done here. Give me 2 more minutes of your time. I must defend my company about pricing. I have chart after chart comparing prices. If you would like more information on this, please feel free to ask us. Next slide, please. This slide shows NAFA's 4 farmers in the back of their book. SAGA's 4 farmers in the back of their book. E.M. Dietrich, Brown, Patrick, and Zimbal versus the 4 farmers in the back of our black book. Rouser, Beckstead, Harris, and Blanke groups. This takes the entire year into consideration. 4 top groups on average versus 4 top groups on average. Comparing the biggest quantity in the biggest color in the biggest size for the year, not for one auction with charts going up and down. This is a year's comparison, not a lot of mumbo jumbo. Please turn to the next slide. This is the last slide and I'm done. I don't think that's the slide. Maybe it's the previous one. Can we go to the previous slide, please? Yes, that's the slide. Thank you. I'm done after this. Okay. For the year on these 4 top farms in gold male 3 zeros, AME averaged 22.82 and we were 100% sold. 100% sold. SAGA averaged 29.48 and beat us by 50 cents without selling all of their merchandise. In gold, black, female, 1 sizes, the standard of the industry. AME sold at all 100% of its merchandise at 26.85 average. SAGA sold theirs at 23.97. Our price was $3 higher than them for the year on the 4 top farms of each company. Now, I'm not going to say stay here next year, say that we're going to beat them next year by $3. I will not say that. But I will say that the auction prices are very competitive, and in most cases, we did beat them this year if you look at the year as an entirety. As a last note, I would like to mention that we have sold 90% of our entire collection for sale this year. It hasn't been easy, but it was done. I thank everybody for your time. I know it's been a long evening or afternoon, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I think if there's any questions for either auction. I have one question for both of you. Board size, do you see an issue with the male board size that we use in North America?
I'll let Saga answer that first. I'm on the screen, so I'll answer it. I'll go ahead and answer it. I don't see an issue with it, Bob. I think that the buyers know about it. It's been done for so long now. I think you do receive less money, quality for quality. It's hard for me to say if that's good or bad for you, because I don't know how much you're saving by using a smaller board. But I don't think it's a problem, and I think the buyers are used to it. It comes down to dollars and cents. How much bigger is your mink on percentage compared to a wide board? And how much less are you getting for your mink because of that?
Charlie, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've done a really deep analysis of narrow and wide boards, and that we found by keeping all the Fur Commission certified skins together on narrow boards, the buyers acknowledge it, recognize it, and pay accordingly. I think if it came a time where somebody wanted to intersort into the European skins, they would have to go to wide boards. But I think at this point, nobody has the money to make the investment in wide boards. The buyers are used to looking at narrow boards. I think it's something for future conversations.
So Charlie, you don't intersort some of the mutations into the European mink?
The only mutations that could be intersorted into our European collection would be welfare assessment, and that are few and far between in North America.
I don't see much of a reason.
All right. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, Bob, I would answer. I don't think there's much of a, I agree with Charlie. I don't think there's much of a reason to change, to go through a costly change at this time. And I don't think it will get you much more money either. I think it probably equals out between the smaller size and a slightly lower price.
Would that be reflective, Ryan? Is that reflective of the fact that the females are predominantly in a different market anyway than the males, and the male boards aren't necessarily that much different?
Well, the male boards are, if I answer your question correct, if I understand your question correctly, the male boards are quite different. So the buyers are used to them being smaller after dressing. The first few years when you went to small boards, there was a lot of complaints, but now they're well aware of it and understand that after dressing, it's going to be smaller. So females are basically the same.
And the female boards are the same. It's only the males we're talking about.
Does that answer your question? I think that was Ryan.
Yeah, I was told the opposite. That's okay. I mean, the important part is, especially with the females, it's a different market for us anyway. It's not really a Chinese product.
Yeah, but the boards, our female board and the European female board is exactly the same.
Any other questions for us?
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen.
I got another one for Alan, and this has to do with the welfare. I know that KF has been very vocal about having things sold at through the welfare program. I know you guys have been very good about making sure that the guys that are selling through AME have been able to get a welfare inspection. I know we talked a little bit about this with Richie on the other call the other day, and everybody's trying to get an extension on that pen size agreement. I know SAGA's trying to go to 2030, and I know Richie said something about 2025 as far as that goes. Is that still in effect?
Well, I would say like this to you. Number one, you asked me about the welfare in this country that our ranchers started to do last year. Number one, we paid for all the welfare visits to our ranchers. That would be number one thing I would tell you. So there was no cost to our ranchers. To answer your second question, I believe that if I'm not incorrect, and I'm not an expert on it, I believe that the welfare issue has to be settled and negotiated between SAGA and Copenhagen, and they have to come up with a plan together. So what that plan will be will come from a combined force of SAGA and Copenhagen. We have been pushing very hard on the cage sizes to be extended, but to be honest, it's a little bit out of my hands. I do believe it will be happening because I do believe that the European auctions need our mink to survive. And I do believe that cage, for lack of a better word, extension will go out there numerous years. How many, we'll have to see what they decide.
Ryan, is that new pens or is that existing pens that we're talking about here?
That's existing pens. I mean, we don't know exactly.
So you're making us change out our existing pens?
No, they're not. They're not going to change your existing pens for a number of years. It depends. What it is being negotiated how many years.
So what they've done as of today, I mean, you probably don't even know this, Alan, that they had their meeting yesterday. They've put forward a size, a transitional size now, which works out to around a 12 by 30-inch pen for that period of time. But at the end of that time, they wanted everybody to transfer over to a European size, which is the 12 by 34 or the equal square inches that would get to that 12 by 24. But they're still calling it a transition, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years. They still expect at some point that all those pens will be changed to a European size pen.
Well, I would answer that like this, Ryan. Number one is that transitional size. Does that work for most of the ranchers in North America is my first question to you.
The only thing that they're worried about, and I don't know where they keep getting this from, but somebody over there keeps making statements that we have all these 6-inch wide by 12-inch long pens that we're putting 16 mink in or whatever. They come up with these absurd randomized arguments to try to come up with a reason to deflect us. And I'm sorry, guys, but and Alan, I respect you, you know this, but I don't see any other game here other than they're trying to push everybody out except for Denmark. That's what they want to see happen at the end. But the sad part about that, Alan and everybody, is that they're not even seeing the fact that they're losing European countries step by step, and pretty soon, what are they going to do with themselves? They're concentrating on the wrong thing.
I personally don't believe they're trying to push you out of business. I think that's a fallacy. I think they realize both SAGA and Copenhagen want your product and they're not trying to push you out of business. They need your product to survive. They're not trying to push you out of business. If they were, they wouldn't extend it from 3 to 6 years. They would just say it's over tomorrow. So I don't think that's necessarily the case. There might be some politics going on, but I don't think it's the case that they are trying to push you out of business. Either company, because they would do it certainly in a different way. They would say, don't sell here with us to start. So I don't think that's the case. To answer your other question, if we get 6 years from now or 5 years from now, my answer would be, let's take it. This fur industry's got a lot of issues that we have to face in the next 5 years. Hopefully we'll have a lot of quantity here in America in 5 years somehow, and we'll have to face that issue at that point.
If I could jump in, I think the SAGA position is a little bit different. At the time of these negotiations going on now, we're not looking for anything less than 10 years. I think we recognize that nobody's going to change a cage size in a shed until the prices rebound. So there are two differences of opinion there. There's also, SAGA's brought up the position that how could they make these accusations that there are all these small pens without collecting data? So what we've asked Welfare Board to do is to collect some data and then bring it to the trade associations to analyze. So we feel that they're making assumptions. They're doing unreasonable amount of pressure to have changes made when everybody's selling at a loss. So I think there is a position there that SAGA recognizes certification as a global standard that's recognized by the fashion brands, and welfare is in addition, and we're trying to make welfare a seamless transition or addition to certification, but only within a reasonable time. So it's not 3 years, it's not 5 years, it's 10 years. We actually started negotiating, asking for more. So, I mean, this topic is in daily discussions in Europe. I think both KF and SAGA have a slightly different position on it. They both sit on the same board. So hopefully there'll be a decision made in the next 2 to 3 months. I know, Ryan, you're very actively engaged in the discussions.
I would respond to that, Charlie, by you're saying KF wants one position and SAGA wants another position by saying your position just 6 months ago was no welfare at all in America. So your position has changed very quickly.
No, our position is welfare transition in 10 years while grandfathering existing cages and sheds. So
your
new
position
construction
was no
within
welfare
10 periods.
Your
No.
position was no welfare. I will stop.
Yeah, okay, you can stop.
All right. Do we have any more questions for this group or? Any questions?
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
If not, thank you, Alan, for your presentation, and we'll look forward. Michael, what's the industry outlook? Is it just general questions that anybody has going forward?
Yeah, I thought we'd have like a little discussion of the direction of the industry, but I think every one of our speakers today has really covered that very well. So if there's any questions, I suppose, to any of the presenters, have a call for that. And I think it's been a very productive and informative meeting. And if we wanted to just go ahead and adjourn, if there's no more questions, that would work for me.
Yeah. Yep. Is there any more questions for anyone? All right, then I'd like to thank everybody for participating in this meeting. We had a few technical glitches that we kind of seemed to work our way through as we went along. I hope all the farmers that wanted to get on did get on. I know there was some problems for people to get on. So I'd like to thank everybody, and I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.